Tonight is the planning and zoning meeting. Tonight we have a public hearing and a general meeting after the public hearing. It's Tuesday, June 20th, about 7:30 p.m. We are here in Town Hall and room 119. So getting right into it, just as an aside, I did make the airport last Tuesday, and my daughters flew home. We're very happy that I picked them up on time, and the girls across came home. That was also nice. It was too important for this. Yes. First item on the agenda is continuation of public hearing regarding special permit application number 329 A's and Apple. Site plan, Town of Darien, 40 and 46 Great Island, proposal to rent stables and associated equestrian facilities on Great Island to an outside operator with specialized expertise necessary to run full-service show stable for programmed activity recreation use with specific restrictions and limits. The indoor and outdoor facilities include an 18-soil granite stable, an indoor heated riding arena, an outdoor dressing ring, a half-size polo field, as well as numerous paddocks and riding trails that comprise the facility. The operator of the facility would be a full-service show stable offering full boarding and training of up to 23 horses, a riding lesson program, an animal therapy program, a summer children's program. The 60.92 plus or minus acre subject property is located on the east side of Goodwives River Road and Long Neck Point Road, and it consists of a total of 3 separate lots identified as map number 58, lots 1A, 13.5 acres, map 58, lot 1, 45.94 acres, and map 58 as lot 1AA, 1.45 acres. That's the accessway. In the R1 residential zone, the subject property is accessible via a causeway at the southern terminus of Rings End Road from Goodwives River Road. The hearing opened on June 13th, 2023. You going to recuse yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Barsanti is going to recuse herself from this application. So Jeremy, Fred, last time we left off on this, I had to, depart to the airport to pick up my daughters. We ended about 9:30 or something like that. I think one of the neighboring or adjacent property owner or neighbor was speaking. They were going to bring somebody up. Does the applicant want to speak to anything? Or you want to go over what's been added to the record?
Why don't I start with what's been added to the record? Much of it's come in throughout the day today, so I want to make sure the commission members are aware of the various items that come in within the past day or so, and then we can get started. We have an email from June 19th, Bill Brady. Email June 19th, Alan Anderson and Ina Ghaznavi of 33 Beverly Place. We have a letter June 19th from Judge Manning Horse Transportation with data about transportation of horses. Email from Courtney Credit, June 20th. Matthew Rizzo sent a letter of support. June 20th. Nicole Brady, letter to Planning and Zoning, June 20th. Matthew Rand, June 19th. Lucy McKinney, June 20th email. Caitlin Critchlow, June 20th. I think I mentioned Nicole Brady. Also, you got what's in front of you, a hard copy from Attorney John Nuff, Hurwitz, Sagarin, Schlossberg, and Nuff. Hard copies are left right in front of you right now. That was also submitted for the record. Matthew Rand, 135 Holmes Avenue, sent an email. Matthew Rizzo, we may have covered that one already. But for those who did send emails or letters that are in the record, the policy of the commission is no need to come up and reread them. They're considered part of the record. The commission's aware of them, and the commission can take that into account.
I want to mention some of them so the people on TV can understand what's going on. But go ahead, keep going.
And you may recall that at the last public hearing last week, the applicant, represented by Town Administrator Kathleen Bush, presented the application. She was followed by Attorney Mark Santagana and Ruth McDermott, and then Attorney John Nuff spoke, and at about 9 o'clock he was about to introduce his consultants, thank you, from Solely Engineering. I think that's right where we left off last time.
And then a couple of other things that also got added
Yes.
to the record was Bob Bush's memo, who's the fire marshal, right? My council plan for grade out, depending on use of property, upgrades may be required for better fire protection for the property. Moving out will have a main entry wide to allow 2 lanes of travel. A tip from Bob Bush. Then I think you have some photos here.
Photos of no public access were also submitted, as was information about the Oxford Riding and Racket Club.
Which is half horses and half tennis.
And as subsequent to that submittal, Amy Zabatakis submitted information to clarify information about the Oxford Riding and Racket Club.
She still represents them? I guess so. She might be a number too.
So certainly that is a little more information for the record, and Mr. Nuff's memo also refers to the Oxford Riding Racket Club.
Okay, so I think everyone got this. Front entrance, no public access, no public access on another road, 24-hour surveillance. I guess those were installed after the town purchased the property. And then we'll hear from, before we get into the other emails, we can hear from, I guess, the applicant. Is Kate Bush here?
Yeah.
There she is. Do you want to add anything at this point in time?
Not this time.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Anything else you want to add? Okay, so I would welcome John Nuff, who was speaking last time. Yep. Before I cut you off and put up here, I apologize for that, but I didn't get my $2. So my wife is very happy. She waited out until 1:30 in the morning.
I have $3 myself. I understand the concern.
I was the third one too. She was home waiting. Thank you.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office at 147 Broad Street in Milford, Connecticut, and I'm here on behalf of the abutting property owners as we define them in our correspondence. As Jeremy has noted, when we ended last time, I was about to introduce Kevin Soley, but there was a number of issues that came up prior to the end of the hearing that my letter that is before you addresses. I just want to quickly run through that because I know you probably haven't had an opportunity to see it. It was submitted online shortly before 5 o'clock, so I just want to briefly review that and then I'll introduce Kevin. So, the letter says there's really 4 issues that are before the commission, each of which requires the denial of the application. In each instance, the applicant bears the burden of proof of demonstrating compliance with regulations. So the first issue, is the current for-profit stable operation a non-conforming use? And the answer is, it's not, but more importantly, the mere fact, as we discussed last time, that the town has submitted the application acknowledges that it is not a non-conforming use. Nevertheless, the application's failure to include any of the required materials for a new special permit application relies upon the claim that no change is proposed to the existing conditions. The two positions cannot be reconciled. An application for a new use requires plans that demonstrate compliance with the regulations. The application is no different than a private barn being converted into a commercial wedding venue. While the barn may be not conforming in some manner, all other zoning requirements must be satisfied. At the very least, you might want to see a site plan that shows what the parking requirement is and where the parking is going to be when nothing's been provided. The next issue is the existing, or actually the existing proposed stable operation permitted under either section 404D or E, which is how the application has come in. And the answer is no. A for-profit use is not permitted as a principal use under either provision of the regulations. The acquisition of the parcels by the town does not magically transform an illegal use into a charitable one. Are two principal uses permitted on one parcel? And this goes to a large portion of the stack of paper that's sitting in front of you. Because in each of those instances, there's an answer as to why those uses are different from what's being proposed by the town. The town proposes that parcels 1 and 1A, not the access road, but the other two main parcels, will have two principal uses: single-family residences and the stable under either 404D or E or both. All other examples cited by the Commission comport with the requirements of Article 4, which recognize 4 different types of uses: permitted principal uses, permitted accessory uses, principal uses requiring special permits, such as 404D and E, and accessory uses requiring special permits. No one on behalf of the town has addressed the issue of 2 principal uses on 1 parcel. But then obviously, should the Commission determine that somehow the application proposes a principal special permit use that's permitted, has the town submitted the required materials for determination for site plan special permit approval, and the answer is no. So last time there was a lot of discussion about the Bob Maslin memo. But it sort of, detracts from the real discussion, because the town does not claim, nor could it claim, that the proposed use or the existing use is not conforming. And so the Maslin memo really has no relevance to this application. But nevertheless, the Maslin memo has found its way into the record and must be addressed. And it's interesting because the Maslin memo is entirely silent on the issue of whether the prior equestrian activities were for-profit or not. Indeed, the words for-profit cannot be found in the memo. The Maslin memo provides that, quote, "The continued operation of a professional equestrian operation at Great Island is a vested, legally non-conforming use that runs the land." Now, I don't know what a professional equestrian operation is, but the use he described was a not-for-profit use. There's no indication in his memo that any of the prior uses was a for-profit use. Rather, it was an outdoor recreational use which was accessory to the principal single-family dwelling use, which is permitted under 405B of your regulations. And I think it's notable that the cease and desist has still not been rescinded even after receipt of the Maslin memo, and you can draw whatever conclusions you want from that. And even if you were to conclude that the professional equestrian operation is a non-conforming, not-for-profit use, at minimum, it had been abandoned pursuant to Section 380 of your regulations and in accordance with the correspondence of Mr. Ginsburg dated April 14th, 1999, which is the next topic. That letter that was submitted was written by Jeremy Ginsburg, dated April 14th, 1999, and that letter provides that, quote, "Soundview Stables is not a commercial stable and or riding instruction facility." So the letter is entirely consistent with the finding in the cease and desist that commercial enterprises are not permitted in the residential zone. Now, I know we just got this McKinney email late this afternoon, and she is the operator of the entity of Soundview Stables. And what she describes is, she said, everything that Serenity is doing now is what we did when I was running the operation. Well, what she describes is a for-profit stable use. Now, I'm not going to speak for Mr. Ginsburg, for whom I have a lot of respect, but the McKinney email can be interpreted in no way other than it is a commercial for-profit use. And clearly, that's what Mr. Heyman, your zoning enforcement officer, has found with regard to Serenity Stable. So the use is not permitted, and you have 2 principal uses of the single-family homes as well as the stable. Not permitted. Now, I gave you a summary of all the other, I think I got all of them, the other uses to which you were analogizing as to why Serenity Stable at this location may be appropriate given past practice or past precedent of the Commission. Yet in each of those instances, there is one principal use that is satisfied under your regulations, and there are accessory uses that are permitted under your regulations, either by special permit or just permitted, and there's a variety of mixture of the two. Again, in this case, there is no similar case or use or property that the Commission identified last time that is on all fours with the application of this before you this evening, which is 2 principal uses on 1 lot. And certainly not a for-profit in a residential zone. The coastal site plan waiver. A waiver of the CAM application is wholly improper, whereas here work should have been proposed by the application. Section 813 of your regulation provides that, quote, all uses fully or partially within the coastal boundary shall be subject to coastal site plan requirements. Other activities beyond 100 feet of the mean high tide line may be exempt where no potential adverse impacts can be determined. And obviously the statutory definition of adverse impacts on coastal resources is found at 22A93, 15 of the general statutes. The town has submitted the application for 2 uses, and those uses are partially within the coastal boundary as depicted on the survey submitted with the application. Thus, an application, a CAM application, is required pursuant to Section 8-13. At the very least, no waiver should be granted unless and until the applicant makes a showing of no adverse impacts. From a broader perspective, it is alarming that the Commission would want to waive the CAM application given the parcel's extended shoreline and because this would be the first opportunity to understand the existing impacts on the sound from stable operations. Next, the stormwater management waiver. Again, a waiver is inappropriate, whereas here, work should have been proposed in the application. There's a number of examples in Jeremy's memo that also refer to instances where the stormwater management plan has been waived. The examples cited are irrelevant in that each was the simple retenanting of an existing building that already had a paved parking lot for which the stormwater management system had already been considered by this commission and approved in an earlier application. None of that is applicable here. In this case, a paved lot should be proposed, but it has not been, and the commission has never reviewed stormwater on these parcels. Again, given the parcel's location and proximate location to Long Island Sound, I would think that you'd want to know about stormwater. Then there's the issue of the no public access signage. Several photos of the existing no public access signage in Great Island were added to the record. It is assumed that these were added for the purpose of responding to the claim that the easement prohibits the use of the easement area for, quote, any public purpose whatsoever. The signs are meaningless in the context of determining the party's rights under the easement, and thus access is still not a foregone conclusion. And then my letter concludes with the recommendation that if somehow, despite all these infirmities, that the commission still finds a way to approve the application, that we would then ask the commission to adhere strictly to the applicant and the user's testimony in terms of how the property is going to be used, its hours, the number of horses, the number of riders for 2 years, and prescribe the areas in which on the property the activities are going to take place. So that's the summary of my letter that was submitted today, and now I'd like to introduce Kevin Solvey. And Kevin has submitted 2 memos, one with regard to traffic and one with regard to engineering issues.
Thanks, John. Good evening, members of the Commission. My name is Kevin Soley. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Soley Engineering. Office is located at 501 Main Street in Monroe, Connecticut.
Thank you for your submittal. It's great to see that this is a A-rated traffic intersection.
Absolutely. Yeah, so as Mr. Nuff indicated, we did submit 2 memorandums, one relating to traffic and access, and then one related to more of the site plan related issues.
I don't think we've ever got an E rating for any traffic intersection in the entire town of Darien of 10 years of the commission. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. The primary, I think one of the primary points of the access was actually echoed by the fire marshal and the emergency services, is that from an access standpoint, the existing facility is only accessed with an 11-foot wide driveway, so it doesn't comply with your zoning regulations for driveway widths and things like that. But the big point that I wanted to make kind of here this evening is as an engineer, we're charged with trying to follow the rules and demonstrate compliance with regulations. So from an application standpoint, I think it's been pointed out in our memo, Attorney Nuff has identified it as well. The biggest concern with the special exception permit application before you, special permit before you, is really the lack of information for a number of different components.
Can I ask you a quick question, Leo?
Of course.
I read your memo, the one that stated May 25th, and I work as a third-party consultant myself, and usually go into an assignment with an open mind, whether it's going to be positive or negative, or it's worth $10 or it's worth $100, or it's a yes or a no. Your charges, our purpose was to summarize how the current application materials may fail to meet the requirements laid out in the planning and zoning regulations for such an application. So you charged with finding failures?
Not at all, but once we reviewed the information, it was very clear that there were several deficiencies.
That's not what the sentence says. So if you were charged to just review the application, you wouldn't have wrote fail. I mean, like when we send our stuff out for third-party reviews, like Joe Canis, he reviews stuff. At the end of the day, he usually says, "Oh, it's a great application," but he just goes out there with an open mind. He doesn't know if it's good or bad.
Well, I certainly
So
didn't go
you
into...
said here, starting out, that current application may fail to meet the requirements laid out in the thing. So I've never seen anyone who's a third-party professional licensed by the state of Connecticut looking for a project, looking for failure.
We weren't looking for failure, but what we found were a lot of deficiencies that failed to meet the requirements. We certainly weren't looking for it at the start, but as we started to review the information and the materials, what we found was it was lacking sufficient information. And again,
Okay, that's how it just said. Okay, go ahead. That's what your sentence says.
Well, again, I'm not here to spar with you or to
No, I'm
debate
just
or
reading
create.
your sentence.
I think what's important is the resource that the town of Darien has acquired is a tremendous resource.
Sure is.
And it is located in a very sensitive area, and it's very pristine. And I think that it's important for this commission, as they consider any application, to understand what the guiding regulations are, what you guys are supposed to be reviewing from an analysis standpoint, and there are reasons why those things should be reviewed and should be looked at. And frankly, this application seemed deficient in some of those. Just to touch on a few, and again, it's in my memorandum, and certainly not here again to debate or be argumentative or anything like that. But there are a number of components, that are typically reviewed as part of your applications, regarding, zoning, simple zoning, site plans, compliance, things like that. The materials that were submitted, it was a survey. It didn't have a zoning table. It didn't show how or if it met the parking requirements. It didn't identify where that parking was proposed or if it met the requirements of the underlying zoning regulations for surface treatment, width, size, dimensions, things like that. It failed to have information regarding, it had some information regarding access, but it certainly didn't demonstrate compliance with the minimum driveway width requirements. From a stormwater standpoint, as was discussed, I know this commission has the ability to waive requirements, and you're certainly within your rights to do that. However, there was no information regarding if there is any stormwater management on the site and where vehicles will park, and those are important aspects to consider, because you certainly, based on the intended use of the facility, you certainly can't control every vehicle that comes in here or what that vehicle's condition is, and stormwater management is designed to ensure that, if there's a car with oil leaks or something, that would be contained and managed through a stormwater management system with certain water quality requirements that can ensure that won't result in any adverse impact to any of the surrounding resources. And again, this property is a tremendous resource, and it's something that should be analyzed and understood. From a sanitary standpoint, I know there was a review comment from the health department regarding the existing septic facilities on the property. To my knowledge, I haven't seen any information, or there hasn't been any information submitted regarding where the septic systems are, if those septic systems are in accordance with the state health code, the public health code. I know there was some discussion at the last hearing about the intensity activity on the site, and I think there were some comments made in jest that there'll be one person there every half hour, and there won't really time to use the facilities. But in the application materials themselves, they actually indicate that there would be up to 36 people plus staff at the facility at one time, and not knowing where those toilets are flushed and how that sanitary and that effluent is handled it's something that should be understood and looked at to ensure that there are safe sanitary facilities here, and there is not the potential for any sanitary effluent to get into the sound or any of the other resources on the property. I discussed parking.
You know it's been around for 110 years though, right?
I do, and I can...
And there's no change in use. I mean, your sentence says, recognition of these resources provide any discussion how those resources will be protected by the proposed operations. It's an existing operation. It's been like that for 110 years.
That's correct, and I could certainly show you several facilities that are in operation, that have been in operation for 110 years, that don't comply with necessary requirements and could pose a risk to the environment. And in the absence of any analysis or even indication of how those facilities are managed, you don't know. We don't know how those facilities are. Does this go into a cesspool? Does that leak? Does that go down the hill? Does it run across the lawn? We don't know. There hasn't been any information presented. So it's really just something to consider that this commission should want to consider, because if another application were to come before you with this lack of information, I'm sure you would charge those applicants to do the necessary analysis to demonstrate compliance, or at least that there isn't an issue. There were discussions about, from a floodplain standpoint and from a CAM standpoint, those have been waived and there wasn't a concern about it. And I know that on this map, it very clearly shows and highlights that the building and the stable itself is outside of the floodplain. However, the special permit does propose a number of activities that would take place within the floodplain. The entire horse track and the sand riding surface, that's all within the floodplain, that's all within the regulated area from the wetlands, and it's all within the area subject to the CAM application. So again, without sufficient, typically, generally speaking, the commission would want to rely on sufficient information to understand what those operations are, to ensure that it's compliant with the underlying regulations. And from a CAM standpoint, CAM is actually created through the state statutes for the Coastal Management Act, and it empowers communities, and the DEP empowers communities to make sure that they understand operations that are being proposed within those sensitive areas are done in a manner that won't cause adverse impact to those resources. I recognize that this is a tremendous asset for the town of Darien, and it's something that the town has been very focused on. And I know that when the board charged with creating the advisory committee, they said that one of the first things that need to happen here had to address access and establishing parking areas and creating required signage, and typically those things would be included in the special permit application.
When it's open to the public, it's not open to the public.
Again, it's a special permit application that's before the commission, and generally speaking, those should show sufficient information to demonstrate compliance with underlying rights.
Great.
How is it restricted from the public?
You can't go on it if you're not part of the public, unless you're invited.
Unless you're invited by the stable people.
If you're invited to my house for dinner and I live on the island, you're welcome to come in.
But if you want to go pay for a horse lesson, you can do that too.
If you have an appointment, yeah.
Wouldn't that be the public?
If you have an appointment to go in, yeah.
Okay.
But you can't, today you cannot travel that island. You cannot.
Unless I have an appointment for a horse lesson.
Correct.
Or want to buy a horse, or want to do anything else with the horses.
If you get invited by the horse, you can
Of course, yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, the rest of the information is in my memo, so thank you.
Hold on. Any questions for this gentleman? You're done? Good. Great. Thank you, sir.
So that's all we have, Mr. Chairman, and we thank you for your time. I guess the long and short of it is, once you get past that this is not permitted use because it's for profit, I and my colleagues have been trying to think of an analogous situation. Let's assume that it is a non-conforming use, where this commission, any commission, would just simply take a survey and not want to know all the things that the site plan requirements would show you. You have no idea where the parking is. You have no idea how it's going to be lit, and they're going to be operating at nights. All the sort of like the blocking and tackling issues that your site plan regulations require, none of that's been presented. And there's no basis for the town not submitting that information. At the very least, there might be a claim that the parking lot is not conforming. It can't be. It's not a permitted use. This is indeed a change of use. At most, it is an accessory recreational use to a private home. Serenity has been operating improperly in investment recognized by cease and desist. The town needs to submit an application that complies fully with the regulations, a zoning table, as Kevin indicated, stormwater management, Comm, flood, stormwater, everything. I cannot think, as I said, I cannot think of an analogous situation. If you had a retail building, you wanted to convert it to office and didn't have sufficient parking, you wouldn't say that was not conforming. You don't have to provide the required number of spaces. I challenge you to think of a situation where you wouldn't require the information that is lacking in this application. So that's all we have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. I think the conclusion of your letter from today is the best, where it says, we approve the application that will adhere strictly adhere to proposed limitations of time and duration, number of horses, we do that all the time. Narrowly improve the limited area operations outlined, specific areas and time, identified. So thank you for the recommendations that we always do.
Can I ask Attorney Nuff a question?
Sure you can.
Sorry.
No.
Thank you.
I guess we're, did anybody else have anything for Mr. Nutt?
I'm getting my steps in.
Good. Wish I could say the same. I'm confused about the access issue, because I think you indicated that really all of the accessway is in doubt, whether it's all overused or not. Does that include the part from the Rings End Road along that Long Neck Point Road intersection into the circle, the roundabout?
No, it primarily addresses the cul-de-sac itself.
Okay, the cul-de-sac.
The cul-de-sac is owned by my clients.
Okay, and that's what I call a...
And there are easements that go back and forth to the various parties, but it has a limitation of, but for no public purpose whatsoever. Now, we don't need to discuss in this setting what that is. My only point was last week, and why I brought up here is because, and brought up because of the signs that were included in the record, was that in any case where an application comes before this commission, you would rightfully want to know, well, how are you getting there? Now, this board cannot consider any sort of, challenges by an abutting property owner, whether someone has the right or don't have the right to pass or repass over that easement, but you ought to at least know whether they have the right to do it. If someone wanted to build a rear lots, you would be within your rights to say, well, do you have an easement over the property that fronts on the street? Yes or no? Do you have the, no one's even asked that. No one's concerned. So the point is that we're just letting the commission know and the public know that it's not a foregone conclusion that the applicant has the right to utilize that property.
Yeah, you'd have to go beyond the stable to get to that turn around, the cul-de-sac, as we call it, and out the access.
Well, there's no way in without going over that cul-de-sac.
When you say your clients own the cul-de-sac, which client? Because the only thing that the Great Island Property Owners Association own on the island, because I looked it up, they own the 2 open spaces. That's what they pay taxes on?
Yep, and then the
$7,216 last year for one piece, and $2,264.06 for the other piece.
Right, so there are...
Hold on. They pay no taxes on Great Island Road, which is the end of the cul-de-sac, because it was not, something does not have a tax parcel from last year. So I don't know how you say that.
I believe, if we have the survey...
And then Ziggy's Way, you were here, 6 months ago, and said Ziggy's Way has to change away from Coon Point Road to that?
Yep.
You don't pay any taxes on that road either, so it doesn't have its own tax parcel.
Don't know how that's relevant either.
So how do you know that, who owns it? Because it's not on the tax records.
No, it's on the survey. You can look it up on the town GIS. It's very clear.
I did.
Right, but
it doesn't come up in that ownership.
The cul-de-sac does, trust me.
Right here.
Trust me, I don't think there's any dispute, even by the town.
No, I'm
The
trying
applicants-
to find what property of butters you're talking about, because
Well,
I'm trying to figure
there's a
out.
subdivision map that shows 21 lots. My
Yeah.
clients control 20 lots. My clients control 15 out of those 21
No,
lots.
it's actually 21 lots, you're right, yeah.
And it includes the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, the cul-de-sac does not have a separate tax parcel. So you should look that up if you want to someday.
Well,
It doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't change the question of ownership.
And you were going to address the issue of why we need the cul-de-sac?
Well, because you can't get to the stable without going through, around the cul-de-sac. There's no other way to get there.
I haven't been allowed in there lately, so I'm unclear, but I thought the cul-de-sac would be reached before you got
No,
to...
so here's the cul-de-sac, here's Serenity Stables.
Oh, I see.
So you're coming in from this
Oh.
direction.
Uh-huh. And where's the Rings End, or the extension of Rings End, I'll call it?
Well, this is how you get over to the stable. So all traffic has to go through this cul-de-sac.
Because Rings End is to
Yes.
your right, my left.
Yes.
Okay.
And you're saying the cul-de-sac is a separate parcel?
The cul-de-sac is owned by my clients.
So you say.
But they don't pay any taxes on
But they don't-
it. You can never pay taxes
So-
on it.
Again,
You're making a claim that they own it, but they don't own it.
I would be happy to put a copy of the
Yeah,
deed
it's
in the
okay.
record.
It's okay.
No, I think you better. From what I'm hearing.
Oh, we're gonna close the hearing today.
Yeah.
The only commission wants something.
Listen, not even the town has contested the ownership of that.
The Rings End Road extension has a tax parcel, and it's taxable. So that road's not.
Okay, so,
And then the enforcement of a private easement, I mean, that's a civil matter between you.
Oh,
and the town.
I could not agree more.
So are you asking us to try and enforce that for you?
No, all I'm saying is that the commission ought to know whether or not it does in fact have access.
Well, has your client brought any action to prevent access?
Not as of yet.
But it's continued for over 100 years.
No, so I
So
think
there'd
the
almost be an
chair...
argument that there's a prescriptive easement.
No. So the chairman brought this up last time, that several years ago, as the subdivision was created, there are reciprocal easements that were put in place over all the different roadways. So there's no prescriptive, there are written easements that are recorded in the land records.
Right, but once those easements are violated for hundreds of years, and we're actually seeing the same thing with the application
No,
for the
so-
Ziegler house,
so the
where
easements-
they're violating their own easements.
The
Right.
the easements
Well, that's-
only go back,
Excuse me, restrictions.
the easements only go back several years.
Okay. But nothing's been brought to enforce it.
Not as of yet.
aren't there barricades on one part of the cul-de-sac?
Yeah, there is a barricade that leads to my client's property.
Right, so that part's not...
But again, so we have the right to pass and repass over the main access road to the cul-de-sac for private purposes. And then at that point, it has to be private as well, it's not for any public purpose whatsoever. And then you can continue down onto the town property.
And I'm going to show my ignorance here, as I want to do. There's a distinction between a CAM review and a stormwater management review. Is there?
100%. So
Okay.
a CAM application is triggered merely by owning property or having property that's listed within the CAM zone or the coastal site plan area or the coastal management area. And that's generally anything within like 1,000 feet of tidally influenced property. And typically you have to do a full CAM report that discusses that walks you through, the CAM statute in terms of, what you're proposing and how it is consistent with CAM. A lot of times you want to require public access, but obviously there's a concern about impacts to the coast. Now, typically, as part of a CAM application, you're also going to be looking at issues like stormwater. In this case, both of those have been waived. And it was our position that this is the first opportunity that this commission has had in 100 years to look at those sorts of things, and thought that, maybe now is a good time to at least ask those questions. And as I say in the letter, I don't know what that portends going forward on other applications that the town may be submitting in years to come, but I don't think, listen, you're not really setting a precedent. Precedent is overused in the context of planning and zoning. But I don't think you want to establish a protocol that the town gets a pass on every requirement that you would make every other applicant that comes before you comply with. And there's no question. If this was a private applicant, you would be requiring all these materials, at least a zoning table.
What do you think is the impact of the two addresses being used? Are we potentially making the entire parcel of 60 acres available for stables?
I don't see how you can view it any other way. The application is for all three parcels, the access road, and then the two main parcels, parcels 1 and 1A, that comprise over 60 acres. I know there was testimony last time that the horses are limited to the sort of the equestrian facilities. On the Serenity Stable website, there's horses in the water. My guess is that the horses, if you stable your horse there and you decide to go for a ride, there's no one monitoring where you go. There are trails on the entirety of the 60 acres. And you have the opportunity to go into the water with your horse. I'm sure it's a really wonderful experience, but it's not consistent with what the testimony was. And it's like, these are things I would think that the commission would want to know after 100 years, and maybe we can control some of these things. I think it's entirely appropriate to ask those questions.
Thanks. Okay, appreciate it.
Any other questions for the gentleman? Thank you, sir. Hey, Jeremy, when Goodwives Shopping Center is in a flood zone, right?
Yes.
So we change uses for a tenant in a flood in Goodwives Shopping Center. Do we get CAM applications for them? And flood zones and site plans when they change tenants? It's special use, special purpose?
We have traditionally waived stormwater management
At Goodwives.
at Goodwives for tenant swap outs, whether it's going to restaurant, retail, whatever, personal service use. We wouldn't have them reanalyze the drainage system every time.
What about parking? Do you have to reanalyze parking every single time they change the tenant that's a special permit use?
Not in the past 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Commissions put in new tenants.
So they bring in like a Pilates studio or a hairdresser, which is a special permit?
Yeah, the commission would look at, similar to what we're doing on this application. You ask the applicant, tell us the uses. If it's a Pilates studio, hey, what's the max number of people that would be here? How do you take care of garbage, whatever, deliveries, whatever it is, and then you make your decision based on the information presented by the applicant.
Appointment books and stuff like that, and
Whether it's by appointment only or, say, an ice cream shop where people can come and go as they please.
great, okay.
What if I sold my house on the water to a new owner? Do I need a CAM application?
We would not require a CAM application for additional ownership.
If I may just ask Jeremy, I've seen letters, I believe, explaining the waiver of the traffic and the waiver of the storm management. Was there anything like that on the CAM review?
We did, I believe we wrote a letter for the record,
Okay.
waiving
I
it,
just don't
it was
recall.
way back, John, back in April, May?
All right, if it's in there, I'm sorry, I just didn't know it. I didn't see it.
The CAM waiver, I don't know if we picked up on it, but the CAM waiver.
But, well, I don't think, hold on, I don't think the question was directed to you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I did write a letter waiving, here we go. So, the May 10th, 2023, letter from Jeremy Ginsberg to Monica McNally to waive the formal traffic study.
Yep.
That was,
Jeremy, just to help you, CAM waiver was June 12th.
June 12th. Thank you for helping, John.
Thank you. Yep, good, okay, sorry I missed it.
Okay, I need to ask Mrs. Bush a question. May I ask you a question, please, real quick? Thank you, Kate. With regards to the property, I'm sorry, yeah, can you state your name and information, please? Got it. With regards to the property, do you know if the proposed operator, would ever use the access road for horses being free and out of walking, which is parcel number 1AA? It's the road that comes off of,
Right there.
it comes off of Goodwives Road and
I would think that would be highly unlikely, and that's not in our proposed permitted areas where they could go.
so if we took that out of the application, that parcel, would that be okay?
For them to be,
Not be allowed on that?
other than in a vehicle being transported in or out.
Right, like my
Right.
car, I can drive in, I
Right.
can go across
Yeah, but
it.
we would not want a horse riding out on that part now.
So if there's gonna be a lease with the proposed operator, we would exclude that tax parcel or piece of,
We would have a narrow area where they would be allowed to go.
okay. So if we say, no, you can't have a special permit on that piece, you're gonna be okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Yep, that's it. So the piece this piece we're talking about here, they don't need that. The applicant doesn't need that for part of it, so it's really only the two big pieces, which is where the stables is, which is 1A. What is that? 1A, lot 1, which is 45.94 acres. That's where the polo field is. And then lot 1A, which is 13.5 acres, that's where the stable barn is today. Okay? Okay, so they don't need that other piece. All right, then the next thing I wanted to do was just make sure that there was a bunch of people that wrote letters, some for and some against. I want to make sure we get that stuff in the record. I know it's in there, but I think it makes sense to read it. And then I don't know if the applicant wants to have their proposed operator come up again. I don't know if it is. The one that I found most interesting was, it's dated today from a Mrs. Lucy McKinney. I'm just going to start, Mr. Ovadi, I'm furnishing this information in support of the town of Darien special permit involving the continued occupancy of Surrey stables on Grade O. I guess she was a daughter of a congressman for 16 years. And the equestrian, she said again, the equestrian facilities dated back on the property since 1902. In 1999, when the Ziegler family owned the property, she was the operator there of Soundview Stables. In April '99, they thought it might be a non-conforming use. Prior to that, I guess she worked for Ox Ridge for 14 years and trained horses, and then she went over to Ziegler's. And I guess I'm assuming Helen Ziegler is it the matriarch or the patriarch of the family? Matriarch, right? She
Wife of Bill Steinkraus or something.
yeah. Range with
Probably be her mother, but,
with Helen's mother.
yeah.
That's how far back it is, but I guess she negotiated arrangements with Helen Ziegler, which I guess is a grandmother, the wife of Bill Scott, to rent the stables and it's now occupied Serenity, plus the cow barn. The cow barn is not part of this at all. They don't know.
That's correct.
So we're not touching the cow barn.
Not talking about that.
And the Steinkraus trained horses. After signing a lease with Mrs. Helen Ziegler, which is a Ziegler, they moved out to the property in January of 1999, I guess when the Zieglers owned it, and they had 22 horses there. Soundview received income from boarding horses and provided riding lessons to boarders and individuals that did not have horses at Sound.
How many horses did we?
22?
Oh, I thought it said 2,200. Okay.
22. There's 22, there's 23 stables, including the 5 that are, kind of, one looks like it's really permanent, and some of the others are definitely temporary.
The horse looks permanent.
It's an inside one. After Savvy vacated the property, Twin Stables operated the property by Kim McMullen, took possession to continue providing equestrian boarding and training. As a side comment, my niece also used to ride horses over off the property, and she rode horses for about a month at Twin Stables when they were there. The Stables Certificate of America. The next letter is from Courtney Credite. Oh, it's this woman is Lucy McKinney. No, okay. Courtney Credite. Thank you. Letter in support of Surrey Stables and Ruth McDermott, who joined Surrey Stables after riding on property with kids at Darien, riding for a few years. Trustworthy. All trainers and staff are excellent. It's a wonderful ride on the corner from our house. We're on Long Neck Point. Nothing but positive. Next is Matthew Rizzo. I guess he's a nearby neighbor. He's also a lawyer. All these guys are lawyers. Resident since 2016. Oh, which guy? No, this guy's a lawyer. There's another guy, Paul Hastings, a lawyer. Residents in 2016 reside at Salem Straits, which is nearby. 3 daughters, take riding lessons there. Benefit to the town, traffic concerns. Someone lives a stone's throw from the entrance of the Great Island. There is no one more focused on this issue than me, particularly as the town decided to purchase the property, remains inflexible to uses. I can tell everyone firsthand an increase of traffic because granite is minuscule, as opposed to 3 or 4 cars a day. We did hear from the traffic engineer, submitted a report that it's an A-rated property location. Thank you for that, sir. What else? Then she gets into zoning permitting. Nicole Brady wrote a letter, and I think her husband, Nicole, I think is the wife, and the husband, I think is William Brady. He's the guy that works at Paul Hastings.
Excuse me, I'm Matt Rizzo. Am I allowed to?
Oh, sure you are. I'm going to open up again. I'll say anyone can speak. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Where are you? Did I get there? Go past you?
Yeah, you're just reading it.
I'll go, well, why don't you come up now, since I've mentioned you up? I'm sorry.
Sure. How to do that?
Welcome. Just take your name and affiliation for the record, please.
Sure. Matthew Rizzo, resident of Darien, 3 Salem Straits. I'm a proponent of Serenity Stables staying where it is and continuing to operate. As I said in my email, which some of you I assume have read, our 3 daughters ride there. It's been a great experience for them. It's not a private club. People are allowed to ride there, even if there's not a membership type of requirement or element to it. I live a quarter of a mile from the entrance. I don't notice any traffic going in and out of there. When the town purchased the property, which I was and am against, I was very concerned about that and remain concerned about that. What's going on now is nothing. 3 or 4 cars an hour. There's maybe 10 cars there at any given time if you drive up there. And I don't know how many people have or have not been up there. I made a point about other commercial properties on town, commercial operations on town properties. I don't know if there's a legality difference between Uncle's Deli at Wheat Beach or the kayak business there or Ox Ridge, frankly, but practically they don't seem very different to me. I am a lawyer, as you noted, and I would say, there are points where practicalities trump legalities. This town has bought this property for $85 million. It's incurred massive amounts of municipal bond debt that has to be serviced to the tune of a few $1 million a year. And I really find it hard to believe and irresponsible that we're talking about kicking out the only revenue-generating operation on this property to defray some of the costs that are otherwise borne by the taxpayers of the town. It's really shameful that that's what happens.
Thank you, sir. Nicole Brady, or her husband, live here. I'll speak for them now. I think I went through this. On behalf of Ruth, and I can't really pronounce her last name. Nicodemus. And Serena Savas, I've been there, resident for 2003. I love to get to town. She's in support of it. I was told by Ned Sycross that the family members who rode horse at this beautiful stable influenced many aspects of what horseback riding looks like today. As a town, we are truly lucky to purchase an important place. Ruth is truly a professional. The daughters love Ruth. She's got some friends. Her husband, William Brady, lives at 26 Sears Point Road. My daughter is one of the many riders who benefit from Serenity Stables and phenomenal lessons with Ruth and her team. Just read the article in the CTM Examiner regarding dispute regarding Serenity Stables. Pretty horrified to read the article. I want to pass along, in my opinion, Serenity Stables and Ruth and my daughter, how much they support the earth to me, full support earned over the years. Then there's a letter from Alan Anderson and Iana Gonzi.
Close enough.
Would you like, is that you, sir?
Yeah.
Would you like to speak?
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic, go right ahead.
So,
Just come up to the podium and say your name for the record.
So, Alan Anderson, 33 Beverly Place, also Salem Straits. We live right at the point where you go in, where the point, if you see there's a waterway going.
Yep.
And so, we see the road going in and out.
Yep.
And I'll attest to that, there's not during the day a lot of traffic, seriously, but we do see some. The issue is this: at night, the horse trailers come back. And these are not horse trailers, these are buses.
Okay.
And so because I don't think there's a way that they can actually turn around, they have to back all the way up from the beginning of Rings End Road and all the way around the cul-de-sac, or the round thing, where the mailboxes are, and they go back and forth, and back and forth to get the buses up there, and then they drive down. So this sometimes happens, usually happens at night, so I guess that's the horses being moved back and forth. And then it takes about 10 minutes with lights and, the beep, beep, beep going back.
Yep.
And so generally I would say we have no problems, there being stables and so forth. I just wanted to make this note because in the study that was done, it was basically said, yes, there's horse transports. But there are actually, some of them have been at midnight. And when your bedroom is out to that and your dog hears it and everything, you wake up in the middle of the night. Just want people to be aware.
Good. No, that's important. We in our special permits like the YMCA and other places, we usually restrict hours of major transport. We even restrict hours from garbage men picking up garbage at restaurants.
Yeah. And that would be good. And it would probably help the buses if they could actually see during the night a little bit better to drive that way.
Okay.
Or smaller buses.
Okay. In that regard, we did receive it, or Fred did receive a document from, I think this is Judge Manning, Inc. It's a transportation log dating back to February 2022. Do you want to explain this, or do you want to have the applicant explain it, or the applicant's?
Probably Ruth would be best to explain it, since she's more familiar with how the horses come in, and I would expect that she's worked closely with the transport.
Okay. Is Ruth here tonight? Would you mind?
Sure.
Would you mind just explaining the transport?
Not at all, Johnny, okay.
Please, yeah. Well, you got your word, doing what?
He doesn't do the transportation.
I don't move horses.
Just state your name and affiliation.
Ruth Nicodemus, owner, operator, Serenity Show Stable.
So just before we got a letter today that was written by Judge Manning Horses Transportation, Inc., from a meeting in New York to Ruth. It's dated actually yesterday, the 19th, that talks about trips. I'm going in now. So, yes, take it away.
Thank you. I apologize for your disruption. The tractor trailers do come into the rotary, and because they don't make it around the rotary, they do have to back up to the barn. They do not have any beeping mechanisms on those trucks. It is not, they do not have to have them on them. They order them without that because they find that that can sometimes be spooky to the horses. So there are no backing up components of the beeping or any of those noises. There are lights at night. I did have them send me out a log because when I saw the information, it said something about midnight, which we haven't had anything come in at midnight. We have had things come in at 10 o'clock at night. Those are things that are out of our control. Those are things because there's traffic on 95, a horse show went too long, that sort of thing. Believe me, if I could have them all home by 5 p.m. every night, I would. It doesn't happen on a consistent basis. It happens, I would say, we horse show an average of maybe 3 times a month. And
But the log from the transport guy, I went through the whole thing, and it's
hard to understand, isn't it?
not really.
Oh, okay, I have a hard time
No,
understanding.
it says where you start from, what time you left. They picked up a horse at 9 a.m. and they dropped the horse at night at, another time. They went to Yankee Expressway in Danbury, Connecticut at 4:45 p.m. or a.m. That was p.m. and they got to your place, an hour or two later. There was 2 on here that I guess they picked up a horse at Fairfield Country Club on July 17, 2002 at 10:06 p.m. and it got to you guys at 10:34 p.m. There's another one that got picked up at 9:58 p.m. and got to you guys at 10:16 p.m. So if we restrict your horses to certain hours, is that going to be a problem?
It's kind of out of my control. I don't schedule things to happen late at night, but if I'm at a horse show that's particularly large and by the time everybody gets their turn to go and then gets back on the truck, if it's late, it's late. Again, I wish I could have every horse show be done at 5 p.m. There is the exception, like when we schedule stuff, we always schedule it for things that just need to move from one place to another. We schedule it during the day.
Right.
But the horse shows are a little out of my control, traffic on 95, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Sometimes I have a sick horse in the middle of the night. That tends to be a much smaller truck, though. That's not the big tractor, trailer, bus-like things you're referring to.
Okay.
By the way, they do, and some of them have.
You have to come up to this podium, but you're supposed to speak to us, not them. That's okay.
That's
If I may, Mark Santagata, Case Tushin Santagata, appearing on behalf of Serenity. With all sympathy to Mr. Anderson and not wanting to be a disruptive neighbor, I think the log does document that on occasion there are instances where trucks enter and leave the property later in the evening, not at midnight, but as late as 10 o'clock. But I think if you look at the log, those instances are relatively rare, and generally the horses are delivered and removed from the property at hours that hopefully are not causing disturbance. So while there are rare instances where things are happening later in the evening, they are rare.
And they don't leave at those late hours. They return at those late hours.
Okay. So if they're up in Dutchess County in Saratoga or something like that, and they get out of Saratoga at 8 o'clock at night and hit traffic,
Exactly.
they're going to be at your place at 10 o'clock at night, even though it's an hour and 15-minute ride. Okay. All right, we can deal with that in deliberation, I guess. All right, I think that answers that issue. What else? I think that's most of the emails that I got. Would anybody else like to speak to this application? Okay. Or anything we're missing, folks, on the commission?
No, did you have any rebuttal to anything that was, any of the testimony tonight?
I
Did you have a chance to review this map?
I did, I received Attorney Nuff's correspondence later in the day today. I will just say that I think the public support that's being provided to Serenity certainly shows that currently they are providing social, cultural, recreational resources to the town. So I think that this is the kind of service that is generally beneficial, as has already been highlighted. It's not a club, there's no need for membership. People can just come, enjoy the facility, and take advantage of this new resource for the town. I think another thing that has been highlighted, and is very important in terms of requiring CAM studies or parking studies or coastal management studies, whatever the issue might be, nothing is changing here. We're not even talking about the internal fit-up that might accompany swapping tenants in a retail facility. There is nothing happening here that hasn't been happening since 1913, and there are no physical changes proposed to the operation or the facility. So we all know what's out there. It's been there for over 100 years, and there really is nothing that could not be anticipated from the prior 110 years of history in terms of what the impact of this facility might be. We believe that this is a non-conforming, a legally non-conforming use that dates back far before the implementation of Darien zoning in 1925. And the history of this site is very consistent. I mean, you've got a stable that holds 23 horses. It's almost logical to assume that you're going to have people boarding horses there, you're going to have people training horses there, and people giving lessons there. But we do have proof through Attorney Maslin's report that, in fact, a lot of those activities are documented as having been long-standing. So the fact that a cease and desist may have previously been issued for the site is not determinative of whether or not that was an appropriate issuance. And in fact, the zoning enforcement officer invited on several occasions in conjunction with that cease and desist for historic information to be provided to determine if it was appropriate to proceed. It has not been enforced, and Bob Maslin did provide that detailed report indicating it was a pre-existing and legally non-conforming use.
Okay, so in our resolution, a lot of times we make sure that there's an appointment book and a log book, and I think in your letter that the lessons are half an hour and there's 15 minutes between, all that stuff. And most of the times that ends up falling into a resolution. I call it, there's no like hanging out at the property, there's no loitering is what I would call it. If you don't have a lesson, you're not supposed to be there.
That's it.
There's no food service at all, so I can't go there and order a sandwich and eat.
Can't even get anything delivered.
There's no large events planned at all for the property, so we're not having a special permit for a big horse show in July. Could you at some point in time help staff with regard to the area of the island that you use? Because there's this question about these bridle trails, whatever they are. If they don't exist, then they don't exist.
Right.
So if
I'm not aware of where they are.
Well, you're more than once or twice. So if you could say that we only need this little small area, or this little big area, whatever it is, little big area, is that right? That's all right. So that's that. And would you have any reason to use that access road for a horse being out of the,
You mean this access road?
that goes from the cul-de-sac out to Goodwives River Road?
By cul-de-sac, you mean the rotary, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I don't know.
So you never have horses even go close to the rotary, right?
No.
Okay. So if you can
Their
define.
shoes aren't meant to walk on asphalt, it's very slippery, we don't go for walks down the roads.
Okay. Limited hours, you can keep a logbook. We'll have to figure out no trucks after a certain hour, by appointment only, footnote per service, and then allowed in specific areas. I think that's kind of sort of it.
Yes.
Of course you can, yeah,
So
sure.
you're sort of the only horse expert we have here. Do you believe that the uses are consistent back to 1913?
Absolutely.
So based on what you've read in the record and the testimony of...
And I know a lot of the professionals that were there before me.
Okay.
Yeah, Judy Richter taught the Stein Krause boys, and she had other clients there at the time. When Lucy McKinney moved in 1999, she had 21 stalls. That included one side of the barn that I'm in now, and the cow barn that's up on the hill. Helen Ziegler had her own horses there with bills that they taught lessons on. Teaching lessons out of that property and boarding horses is not anything new.
And then with regard to the apartments inside the building, my understanding, figuring as all this stuff out, there's 3 residential apartments in there. You're only getting one of them.
Correct.
And it's all you need. It's all you need, it's all you got.
Correct.
And somebody who takes care of the horses lives there with their husband and their little kid.
Yes.
If I may speak to one thing in terms of the use of the property and the extent to which the property is subject to the stables use, all that is going to be tightly defined in a lease that is pending the outcome of...
Yeah, but we don't have the lease, and that's not part of the record, so we can't really...
Okay, but
We're gonna have to
I will
define
say that, you know, it's not like this is an open license to wander anywhere we want. We will be limited, and we anticipate that those limitations are going to be imposed in a contract.
No, we'll limit you, trust me. We'll limit you.
Okay.
It'll be a nice little small box. As long as you fit in the box, we're fine. Anything else for these guys? Oh, someone else, okay. You guys,
I have a question.
please come and state your name for the record and podium, please.
I can sit?
Yeah, you're all set, thank
You
you.
might have to answer my question.
Well, you have to ask the commission, that we can ask.
Oh, okay, fine. I won't go for it. Hi, Alexis, Suite 20 Beverly Place. I just have a question about the camp element of the proposal. Has it been running as a camp these last few years, or just as individual lessons and things?
Okay. Now you
Oh, sorry.
You have to come back to the podium.
Absolutely.
So the neighbor just asked, has the camp been running? Is it for you this year?
Yes, it's been running.
So how many participants on average during the camp, summer camp season?
How big is
This
the camp?
week, we have 5. That's an average. That's the most we have in our biggest weeks is 5. And most of them are clients that have already ridden with us or already have ponies with us, or moms and dads are here tonight.
So then there's a camp hours is how long is the camp period?
9 to 1.
Months. Sorry.
It started this week, it runs for 6 weeks consecutively. Which I
So
think
we'll
brings us
say-
like middle of
We'll
August.
say
or
June
first.
15th
Mhm.
to August 15th?
Sure,
Okay. And it runs for how many hours a day?
from 9 to 1,
9 to 1.
Tuesday through Friday.
Okay. And then what's the maximum campers you would like to have there?
Maximum is 10.
Is 10?
Yes. I don't think we hit that number any week this year.
We'll ask the property owner, the applicant, if that's something that they would enjoy. Okay? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to get a sense of the traffic flow and, you know, was it 36 kids getting dropped off at 9 a.m. and...
Can I actually speak to that? This gentleman said something about there being 36 people there at one time.
Sure.
It's never happened. I have 22 animals currently. Most of the animals belong, I have single families that have multiple animals. I have one family with 3 animals, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no way there would be 36 people there at any one given time whatsoever.
You only have 22 horses. Right?
Exactly.
But can all 22 horses be ridden the same exact time?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a lot of horses, but they're like dumb on stakes. Right?
Worse than that, yeah. Like, thank you.
Well said, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Kate, you usually get the, sure, go ahead. Wait till you get up there, because the mic.
Sorry.
You're also on TV, so if you're standing.
Sweet, I know. I would have dressed differently. Just a question about the access road from Rings End up there. And I know that there's a discussion at some point about widening it, but is that not part of this
It's not part of it.
discussion? So that part, when does that?
There's no construction, there's no use, there's no changing. No physical change. Okay. We're all set, right?
I'm good.
Mrs. Bush?
Yes.
You usually get the last chance to close. Any last closing statements at all? You have to come up to say no. We have strict rules here. And you heard the stuff that Ruth said about the different items? I mean, are you okay with the camp being?
Yes, we are aware of the camp, we are okay with the camp.
Okay.
And no, I don't have anything to add. I want to thank you for your consideration of our request to continue this limited use of the property in a way that benefits all the town.
Thank you. Okay. With that said, I'd entertain a motion to close. John makes a motion, looking for a second. Mike makes a second. Those in favor? Hearing's closed. Great. All right. We'll probably deliberate this, what, in a week, 2 weeks?
If not next week, then it would be July 11th, probably. July 11th? Yeah. Probably July 11th.
Okay, so we can have a week off of this. Okay. Good I would read this one. We'll wait a second.
Just sit elsewhere.
You refuse? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I don't know.
Steve?
Is that?
Up here, near the door.
Wow. That's the biggest showing we've seen supporting something.
Except you have nice guys.
I wasn't here for that.
One guy, yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. Read to record. Continuing the public hearing regarding the coastal site plan review number 372, flood stem prevention application number 436, land filling regrading application number 544, Mitchell and Kerry Ross, 17 Nickerson Lane. Proposes to construct a new 6-bedroom, single-family dwelling on a now vacant lot, construction of a new driveway and parking court, patio and terrace areas of the pool, and perform related site development activities, including regrading the property, installation of stormwater management. The project will establish new connections to public water and sewer. The 0.9 plus or minus acre subject property is located on the southwest side of Nickerson Lane, approximately 750 feet west of its intersection with Nearwater Lane. It is shown on Assessor's map number 52 as lot number 9 in the R1 residential zone. The hearing was opened on May 23rd. So Jeremy, can you update us on where we are?
Sure. Since the last hearing, we've received 2 items for the record. One is a letter dated June 6th from peer reviewer Matt Kopp, who's here in the back of the room, and a letter dated June 12th, 2023 from attorney Amy Zavatakis, who's also in the back of the room. Their letters are in the record, and the commission has copies of both of those. Kurt has worked on revised plans, which were submitted for the record and received in our office June 5th, which responds to many of the EPC comments. The EPC, is my understanding, Kurt, has closed the public hearing and will be issuing a report soon. And under the state statutes, the commission is allowed to accept the EPC report after the hearing closes. But I know you went to EPC numerous times. The sense I get is a lot of the changes are in response to their concern.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Kurt Lowenstein, licensed professional engineer in Connecticut with Land Tech. Our offices are in Westport, Connecticut. I'm joined this evening with a similar crew to when we were last before you. Mitch Ross, who's the property owner, and Richard Nichols with Vanderhorn Architects, which is the project architect on the property, or for the project. As Jeremy said, we do have good news to say that we closed EPC at the previous hearing, awaiting their resolution, which my understanding is probably next month's meeting. The plans before you incorporate the changes that I discussed with you when we were in front of you last. Now they're formally incorporated. All documents have been updated to reflect consistency throughout that. If you recall, the main change was the shape of the pool, and then on the landscaping plan, we incorporated a number of comments that were provided by Matt Pop, who's the peer reviewer for both P&Z and for EPC. So those have been incorporated. I know Matt has issued another letter with some minor comments. EPC, I believe they're consistent with the same comments he issued to EPC. I think the sense I got from EPC is that many of those will be looked at as conditions of approval. The main points, trying to find some additional areas so maybe we can add some more trees, down in the water area here, or enhance this buffer some more. So we're open to looking into that. I would think that would be something maybe prior to a zoning permit, prior to issuance of building permit, as I've seen typically handled with things like that. Obviously it's at the discretion of the commission here, but those are the really minor changes to the plans, but formally incorporated based on our time with EPC.
If I could interrupt, I did forget to say that on June 6th, Joe Canis sent a letter for the record noting that all outstanding comments have been addressed. Joe Canis is peer reviewer on that.
Because he pitched it for Terrace, right?
Correct. So
it's important.
Yes, I do. So we've incorporated any of the comments that Joe had previously.
Yep. Okay. Do we want to hear from Matt Comm?
Sure.
Okay. You all set?
I'm all good. Unless there's any questions.
I do. I just want to clarify, in Joe Canis's comments, one of the questions he had was regarding the pool, that he thought the protrusion of the vertical wall of the pool's edge would create an elevated risk. Is that since been changed with this?
Correct. That was the previous rendition. If you recall, it had the end of the pool more triangular shaped. By revising to this, that satisfied his concern.
Okay. And is the portion of the fence in the floodplain now? It is no longer, or is
there will be some portion, but any portions that are will be compliant with all FEMA guidance.
Those were my questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Pop, welcome, sir. So you peer review this application, and I think at the last meeting we heard from a neighbor that lived at 19 Nickerson. He was worried about the bushes on his side of the house. He's the guy that's on this plan straight to the north. Yeah, that guy.
Name, please.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist from Environmental Land Solutions out of Norwalk. I've peer reviewed the application. I've been to the site several times. My partner has also been to the site a couple of times. We originally prepared their first report. I think we had like 40 comments. They made some, I would say, maybe doesn't look it, but that was a major changes to the plan. They scaled the project back, increased the buffer width, and so I would say the last set of comments were just maybe some of the things that they missed, and I felt that they were minor enough that they could be incorporated as conditions of a permit for like EPB. One of the things that EPB didn't come before them was impacts to wildlife. That's kind of outside their jurisdiction, but for you guys it's not. So that was one of the things about having additional trees, the shade trees along the tidal wetland buffer. The trees provided the barrier to from the active development to the wetlands. And then, again, a lot of our comments, again, were just maintenance, how the wetland buffer is going to be maintained, where the lawn is, the meadow area, how that gets cut. We only want that cut like once a year or so. And then I think the last, I think we had a letter, I think there's 5 comments. The last thing was, they're probably going to want a path to the tidal wetlands. We probably want that shown on some plan at some time, so that in the future, one just doesn't appear.
Do we know where that is today, or that could be today?
I think it would probably be down, in this the western corner of the property, where the lawn goes to. I don't know if they had a comment, but that could be delineated with the boulders too. We do have boulder demarcation along the tidal wetland buffer, and that path to the down to the water could also be delineated with the boulders. The other conditions, we're just adding additional plantings to the wetland buffer. And I'm not sure what the comments were from the neighbor to the north.
I think it was just they wanted to make sure no trees got taken down.
Yeah. So
They did or did not?
Did not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, are they staying?
I think I'm pretty sure it was
right along the property line, they are staying. But again, there's one condition that I thought that along the coast is great to have evergreens. So we did have a condition to plant some evergreens, such as American holly and red cedars. So those, I think those probably would be planted, maybe in that vicinity. They probably aren't going to plant those in the buffer because they probably don't want their view blocked.
Do you subscribe to pull out of the forest area that's there today? Do you subscribe to getting rid of all the dead wood and then letting the good stuff grow?
No, I would leave the dead wood.
Leave the dead wood?
Leave the dead wood, yes. Great for wildlife habitat. As soon as you start taking out the dead wood, before you know it, there's lawn growing in it, so.
Then the muskrat's got to find a new home?
Yes. So again, usually when someone says they want to clean something up, I know what that means to me, what it means to contractors, probably something different. And with the homeowner, it probably means the whole lawn area.
Okay. So. Any questions for Matt, folks? No? Are you in agreement with this path to the water?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a great suggestion, honestly. Mr. Ross does like the kayak. It does provide nice access to be able to walk down, and then the intent is any of these plantings that we're putting in this buffer, we don't want to disturb them. So I think that's a great suggestion, which, again, I think that's certainly can be incorporated along with trying to find an opportunity to get some additional trees in there, some evergreens and some shade tree additions in there. That would be, I think, could be easily incorporated as well.
Chairman, can we make that all a condition of approval so we can close the hearing tonight, where they put this path to the water?
Yeah, I think that's something, it sounds like it can be sorted out pretty straightforward.
We don't have to know exactly where it is.
That might end up being the EPC rather condition, because they have this letter.
I think it will be.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, and I think that's why, when you close the hearing, when we put on for deliberations, you're likely to have a report, and the commission can pick through and see if the EPC does approve it, hey, what conditions did they put on it?
Can we just incorporate those conditions, or it's their jurisdiction, not ours, really?
Sure.
Except for the animal.
Yep.
Okay, we'll keep the owls there. We're all good? Okay. Would anyone in the public like to speak to this application? Oh, let's go with Mrs. Epton, if you don't mind first. I think they'll go to you last time. Welcome. Let's state your name and affiliation for the record, please.
Certainly. Hi, my name's Amy Zautakis. I'm an attorney with Virtue Law Group, and I represent the neighbors of this property, namely Yvette and Peter Enkema Van Dyke, owners of 19 Nickerson Lane, Peter and Lisa Thorin, owners of 31 Outlook Drive, Justin and Lindsay Vinci, owners of 10 Nickerson Lane, and Alec and Gail Wiggin, owners of 14 Nickerson Lane. And some of the neighbors are here with me this evening. We appeared in objection to this application in front of the EPC, and I've also submitted a couple letters to your commission. The house has gotten smaller, and the pool has gotten smaller from what was originally proposed, and the neighbors certainly appreciate that. But this is still a very large house and a lot of disturbance on a very small lot. As was discussed, there's a huge amount of tree removal without many trees being proposed to replace them. I think that is, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for the wildlife in the area. We've submitted photos of the wildlife in the area currently. It also is counter to the Plan of Conservation Development, which talks about improving and protecting the views of coastline properties from the water and protecting particularly the tree covers and natural resources. There is also a tree in the front of the property. It's a large, I believe it's an oak tree that is proposed to be removed as part of this application for no reason that I can tell other than to have sort of a large sweeping driveway. That's a very mature tree that, I think there should be some more effort made to try to save.
Wait, can you just try to point it out where it might be?
It's basically in the driveway. It's the largest tree that you can see. If you're looking on the landscaping plan, I think it's a little more obvious where it is.
Okay.
You see that?
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, did we ask them to put X's for the ones that are coming out? Was that this application?
On the landscaping plan, there is an X on it. Which plan? Are you looking at the landscape plan?
The last sheet.
Got it. Okay.
Got it?
30 inch, yeah, let's get the 30 inch on. Okay.
So that's sort of, as far as the landscaping, the other issue is that this property already has a great deal of grade change. They need to raise the house up above the flood elevation, and so in order to do that, there are retaining walls on one side of the property. There are not any engineered plans for those retaining walls, which are right up against the property line for 10 Nickerson Lane. That's actually one area where there are some evergreen trees that are along the property line that we're concerned about, that building a wall with the necessary footings and encroachments into the neighboring property, what that's going to do to those trees and their health. And also just that wall will be stable, since that is, the 10 Nickerson at that point is actually higher. On the other side of the property, we have extremely high foundation walls, over 6 feet tall, to get this house over the flood elevation. And we understand, they have a right to build a house and it does need to be above the flood elevation, but there is nothing softening that at all. And then there are just so many walls and grade changes that there's just a lot of hardscape without a lot of documentation in terms of how that's going to be done and making sure that those are secure and protected.
You've been around before. You know that all the walls get signed off by the building department.
Right, and I have had applications before where we've been required to submit information from a structural engineer at the time of application to the commission to show that they are properly engineered and can be engineered. Again, especially when we're talking about...
We've had, what do you call it, tear sheets out in certain times.
Right. Especially on this side, we're very close to the property line. If the only way to build that wall is to encroach upon 10 Nickerson, I think this commission needs to know that and understand that.
That would be trespass, wouldn't it?
We would prefer, but that's then, what have we approved if they can't build the wall that they're showing you without, we don't know.
Then they don't have approval.
You're going to do something, you're saying you have to get on the other side of the wall to be able to build a wall.
If they have to do that, then they can trespass it from the property.
Right, they have to ask their permission to get an easement or get, right to...
And I guess I'm saying, I think it would be appropriate for this commission to confirm that they don't have to do that before they approve these plans. I think it's appropriate to ask them to provide you that information. We've got, and again, a lot of this has to do with the walls. I'm confused, frankly, about how the pool walls themselves are designed to withstand flood venting if we're talking about a pool that's filled with water. unlike a building, you can't have, don't think we have a way to have the water go underneath it. So, again, I just haven't seen a lot of detail on these various walls. And then, those are all really about the project itself, but what I also haven't seen as much of as I've seen this commission require with other applications is the construction phasing and the construction plans. This house is very close to the wetlands line. They show silt fences, and there's a couple feet between where those silt fences are and the edge of construction. How do they plan to get equipment back to the back of the building? What is the plans for this? They also said that their stockpile area is sized for what the lot could handle, as opposed to being sized for what the actual construction requires. I think that's backwards. If you don't have enough space on the site for your stockpile, I think you've got to change what you're building. Nickerson Lane, it's a lane. It's very narrow. And there's a curve there as well. We want to be sure that they're not planning on parking construction vehicles or stockpiling building products on the road in this neighborhood, because that's going to be a very unsafe situation. So I think that's all that I have right now. I know that some of my clients are here and would like to speak themselves, unless there are any questions for me.
Fantastic. Do you have any questions for Amy's at this point? Maybe Ross had the okay? Like you're okay? Yeah. Okay, thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
I'm just going to tee up, where's the applicant? Can you just kind of keep your mind to mentally remember some of these things we have to ask you? Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this application? Sir, please. Welcome. Just state your name and affiliation for the record.
Do that one up there, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So you're on TV. There's a camera soapers here. There's a bunch of them.
My name's Alec Wigan. I live at 14 Nickerson Lane, right across from the subject property. And I was just making one request. Things have changed. There's stakes in the property right now, but they conform, I believe, to the old plans. And I was just wondering if stakes could be put in that conform to the new plans, so that the folks, around the neighbors could just get a good idea of what the changes conform to. And one of the issues is setbacks, just because they changed from the first plans. So we're just trying to get a better idea of where the house is and where the driveway is, all that stuff. And I do have a special feeling for that oak. It's about 135, 150 feet tall. Practically speaking, sometimes great things have to change. But if there's a way to do the driveway that, kind of keeps that tree, it would be a good thing, I think.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this application?
I just sort of quick.
Please, welcome. Just say your name and affiliation for the record, if you don't mind.
Pieter Enkema van Dijk, 19 Nickerson Lane.
Yep.
So it would be, just to confirm Alex's question, the stakes that are there now is for an old house? Okay.
We'll have to ask for the applicant.
What is I never got a clear answer what the square footage of the new house will be, and what it was, the old house was.
But there's no house there at all. So did we ask that at the last meeting what the square footage of the house was?
I believe the question was raised. I don't know I don't recall off the top of my head what the answer was to that.
Okay, that's not 6 bedrooms, right?
Having access to
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah, last time they said they didn't know, but they designed the whole house just, that we have an idea. What's the square footage of the old house, what's the square footage of the new house? And
well, there's only one house.
Right. The originally proposed house.
Okay.
Yeah. And I must say, look, the trees, I'm a little confused because if you go now on property, they tag the trees that are coming down with blue ribbons, which is good that we can see that, but basically all the trees are gone. Nothing left, right? The way I see it, there's a little like small shrubs between our house and their house, or the proposed house that's still there, but everything goes on the, everything goes. It's not a, so I was a little surprised by that is necessary with the new proposed house.
Yeah, I thought we left it, we could tag the trees that were staying, those tags still are leaving.
That would be great, if there was a stain, that would be great.
Yeah, that was discussed at the public hearing. I think Kurt may have mentioned at the public hearing that they would attempt to go out there and flag the trees that were going to be removed. So Kurt can of course address that when he comes up.
Okay?
Yeah, because there are a few trees that are well outside of the house. I don't know why they need to go there.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you're allowed to cut down trees on your property. It's, you know, I cut down 10 when I did my house.
I understand. But,
Kurt, you want to try to... Anybody else want to speak to something?
Yeah, I also want to say something.
Go right ahead. Just state your name and affiliation.
I'll do it real quick.
Oh, plenty of time.
I'm Yvette Inkema-Van-Dijk, 19 Nickerson Lane, wife of Peter. And I really want to go to bat for that oak. I mean, it's the biggest one on the property. It's not, I can't believe it's so little on this map, because it's enormous. It took 75 years or whatever to grow. I mean, longer than we've been on this earth. And we talked amicably with the Rosses afterwards, after the last meeting. They also indicated they like to have buffer in between the neighbors, right? It's what people like. This is it's naturally there. If you leave it, you know, to sacrifice a corner of your driveway or whatever from your driveway, it would be a shame. It's there. You don't have to replace it. It's just there, and it's beautiful. It's the biggest of them all. So I really want to put in a request to save that tree. It's worth it. It's you know, also for the habitat, for whatever lives in there. It's good to keep. So that's my speech.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else like to speak to this application? Is everybody? Amy, you're good, right? Kurt, talk to us. I mean, we've had some applications where they move driveways and save trees. Other times they, you know, it's right in the middle of the property. You know, and then the trees that you tagged already, those...
They're tagged out there, yes.
They're
Inside, the ones that will be going. The only one that is not is that, and the reason for that is because it is covered with multiflora rose and poison ivy just about or surrounding the entire trunk. So we certainly could have went to war and dove in there to tie it up, but I can state on the record that is the tree, the photo that the neighbor submitted. It does fall, unfortunately, right through the front where the driveway is going, and you know, even shifting the driveway slightly, unfortunately, is not going to save that tree. A tree of that size, construction disturbance, as you all know, that close to a tree, the likelihood of it surviving is very slim. Not to mention how close it would be to the house. That's a threat of life to the homeowners on the property. While you know it would be nice in a perfect world that we could keep it, it is unfortunately going to come down. We are proposing a new tree that is an oak that will be located here. I recognize it's not a 150-foot mature oak tree one day. It certainly will be, but it's outside the jurisdiction of EPC as far as their 100-foot boundary from Holly Pond, 50 feet from the wetlands, and as the chair stated, Mr. Ross is well within his rights to take this tree down. So I think I had 7 items on here that I picked up from the comments.
Yeah, one time with the walls and whatnot, that this tax was asking.
Sure. So we did provide. It did come up. Joe Canis, in fact, brought that up, and we do provide a typical detail. But to request for a single-family application, to request a full engineered wall design would require retaining a structural engineer, doing a full design, and these details for a single-family resident, this is simply way early in the process. There's always an engineering solution, L-shaped walls where the vertical face that's facing the neighbor's property, there's no protrusion of the toe of the footing beyond that, so there'll be no need for access as you have to put out. If there was only one design where it would have to go to the property, we would have to seek their rights anyway. We couldn't just go out there and just rip through their property. So that's not going to be the case. The likely solution here will be an L-shaped wall where it'll have a longer toe going into our property, meaning that this is our wall here against the property. The toe of the foundation, the flat bottom of the foundation that is resisting the overturning of the wall, will extend further on this side. It's a little bit trickier of a construction. It's a little bit more expensive to build than your typical wall. But it can be done, and there will be fully engineered, stamped, and approved drawings that will need to be submitted prior to a building permit before any construction can start on this. So I can assure you there will be no grading rights needed on the adjacent property owner without the proper due diligence done. So that was the retaining wall.
What about the retaining wall around the pool?
The retaining wall around the pool, so I believe what she was pointing at is if there's a flood, will the walls be resistive to the flooding waters? Any pool that's built in the flood zone will have to be equipped with hydrostatic relief valves underneath. There's a pool this size, typically there's two, one on either end, but pool this size there may be multiple. Again, that's the pool drawings, same as the retaining wall. Because it's a structural element, we'll need a structural engineer that will have to provide full designs, stamp drawings. They will need to be approved by the building department before any permit can be issued. And those details are critical, especially because it does have a flood zone associated with it. So we certainly can't go build this thing without all the belt and suspenders that are needed. As far as the exposure of retaining walls on this side, it's really just this face, and it's only about half of the distance of the face of the wall, because the grade as we get up here, so the finished floor is 17.5, we're 12 and 13 here. That's minor, that can be covered easily with shrubs in our planting plan.
So what neighbors can see that wall you're talking about?
The question is the neighbors to the north, which I believe is 19 Nickerson.
Yeah.
So you said the face of that wall will be 12 feet?
No, elevation 12. So you have a 17.5 finished floor, and then the grade around the corner is 12, 13 in that area. So you have a minimal sort of typical exposure you may see on a sloping site. Certainly as you start to work your way down the slope, there will be more exposure. However, we are providing foundation screening along here. There is an extensive wooded buffer that we've stated on the record repeatedly during EPC, and I'll do it again tonight, that the silt fencing that's being proposed and the tree protection fencing will act as the limit of disturbance. Meaning everything beyond that, specifically to the north where our neighbors are concerned, there will be no construction activity, there will be no encroachment into there, no removing of trees. So this buffer will be maintained.
So what's the trees we're talking about? Because it says right here, wooded area to remain, remove invasive, release overstory trees.
So removing invasive would be multiflora rose, things of that nature that are detrimental to the environment. We put together an invasive species removal plan on the plan side, and have reviewed it.
I believe he has.
And during construction, there'll have to be a licensed professional that will be the one implementing this plan. It's not going to be just, some landscaper going out there and pulling whatever they think. It'll be under the guidance of a licensed professional.
Okay. What about the stockpiling?
Yeah, the sequencing of this construction is going to be, you're going to have to build your way out.
Correct. So first things first is all the soil erosion measures and the limit of disturbance needs to be established. At that point, yes, this is not a typical site, so you will have to work your way out. It's not anything that hasn't been done on any site in Darien around the water. Competent contractor is fully capable of doing that. Stockpile wise, yes, there is limited space on a site like this, but the comment that Ms. Zavatakis made about your development should only be as large as your stockpile can be is just, it's not inaccurate. Projects all the time have smaller stockpiles. What it means is the contractor needs to be diligent as your stockpile is filled, meaning that you're filling your area. It needs to be removed, materials need to be removed off site, so it's more frequent. Certainly if you have 10 acres to work with, you can stockpile all the materials you need all in one spot, leave it there for the whole job. That won't be the case here. There's going to need to be, like I said, diligence by the contractor to remove that on off-site. There will be no stockpiling in the streets. There will be no material storage in the streets. That, under any application in any location, is not permittable. Violations would be issued, cease and desist orders. Certainly with the neighbors' concerns with the project, the first amount of soil that was dropped in the street, I'm sure you'll be getting a phone call, or Jeremy or Fred will. And,
just to explain really quick, there's a driveway curtain that goes into the street. What's that? Is that the right of way on that plan?
Right here?
Yeah, there's two lanes. Yep.
Yes, that's the curb cut.
Okay.
That's where the existing driveway is now.
But are you like boundary blocking from the property line out to wherever the driveway is? Is that what I'm looking at? Where the road, I guess that's the road belt?
Oh, will the curbing extend all the way up to the road? Right. I think it does show that, but in reality, it'll be pulled back from the road. That's just a minor oversight on the plans here. But yes, we will need to pull any curbing back away from the edge of the right of way.
It's those things, those wings there, right?
Correct. So the shape of it will remain, but the curbing will, although it does extend to the road, it'll end up being 5-10 feet back from that, just so as the plows go through, it's not ripping the Belgian block out. It's both a benefit to the town. One, some towns require hold harmless agreements for any Belgian block type of thing in the right of way. I'm not sure, Jeremy, you could correct me.
Darien's policy is no Belgian block in the right of way.
So that'll be pulled back.
Just be scaled back.
And sometimes some people put Belgian block across the end of the aprons.
Right. If it's on your property, that's okay. And when they get a street opening permit, one of the requirements is a street opening permit. The details will be worked out with DPW.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple just deleting of one line on either side.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we have the cut and fill on this?
Yes. Cut, roughly 700 yards of cut, roughly 190 cubic yards of fill, which puts you in the 500 range for your net.
So you're taking 500 cubic yards off?
There'll be material removed off-site, yes.
Okay.
And including, there'll be additional material for the foundations that will need to be removed off-site. This is a net export job.
Right.
Yeah.
So your stockpile really only has to be 150 yards, right?
Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, realistically, it doesn't, the stockpile just needs to be, it doesn't have to be any specific size, to be perfectly honest.
You might take 700 yards off. And then
exactly. It might need to be as big as a truckload so that they can, when the truck comes, they can load it, they can get another one set up, and it slows down construction certainly, but look, that's what they're going to have to do here. This is the house that Mr. Ross would like to build. I don't think it's unreasonable for this area. Anybody that's driven around the Nickerson area of Darien and around Holly Pond, I know a comment was made that this house is, extremely large. If you look at any of the other houses in the neighborhood, it's certainly on scale with that. So we'll have, construction-wise, we'll have to just deal with that. It takes a competent contractor, like I said. I think that's the biggest thing I can drive home is that the contractors need to be diligent and they need to, use best management practices.
Okay. Good.
Unless you still have questions on there. Are you going to go over square footage and you're going to go over restaking the property for?
I do.
Okay.
Yep, that's...
Before you jump into that, quick question for you, just because we were just discussing the driveway and the setbacks. The requirement that we have to have parking for on-site parking has to be behind setbacks, correct?
That's correct. In this case, that is served by the garage.
Okay, in this case, it's served
by... 2 car
by...
or 3?
2 car garage, so there would not need to be a parking courtyard area behind the setback lines.
That's correct. It would be the actual parking, but the back out area can be closed.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So you're right.
So I have two more items on the list here, and I think you've pointed them out. So the first being staking the new building footprint. I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that, and if it's acceptable to Mr. Ross to allow the neighbors on the property to take a look at the stakes, otherwise they can certainly look at it from their properties or the road, but it's not a difficult task of updating the stakes, so certainly that's something that could be done prior to construction, no problem.
So what I'm sensing is that the original size of the house was shrunk down, right?
Roughly 10%,
Okay.
and then it was shifted.
And it wasn't was it 3-car garage, now it's a 2-car garage?
Correct.
Okay.
And then the pool itself was also shrunk and reconfigured in size. So we
Okay.
basically squished it down and shifted it up the property.
So the neighbors would just like to see where this new house is going to be?
Sure, yep. No problem. On the staking, and then the last was the building size. Now, was it square footage of the living space, or are we talking about just footprint of the roof area?
No, square footage of the living space.
Yeah, so it's, you'd like to, I think last time when Doug Van Boom, they gave us the first floor, but I said, well, how big's the house?
Right, I mean, the square footage of the new is roughly 7,000. I don't see how that's honestly relevant to this, but we're 7,000 square feet roundabouts with the current, and you know, give or take the 10% of, you're probably, we're in the 8,000 range. I don't have those exact numbers offhand, but I do know that the current is around 7,000.
Okay, so it's like 3,500 square feet per floor?
Roundabouts, yeah, something like that.
And that's air conditioned, right? It doesn't include the garage?
That does not include the garage, yeah, that's the conditioned space.
Anything else we missed in terms of questions from the neighbors or anybody else? And 6 bedrooms, right? You were able to go over that?
Yes. That's all I have for neighbor comments unless I missed something.
You good? You brought the property in? Sure, sir. You get a second bite of the apple? We're open commission.
It's really simple.
Right ahead.
I'd like to say thank you for restaking according to the new plans. But it would be nice if that staking could take place not just 1 or 2 days before the trucks come in, but next week or so, maybe.
You want a vacation or something?
No, it's just so we can actually take a look at it, you know?
Sure.
And that wasn't mentioned in terms of timing, and so can that be?
Sure, we can ask.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
No problem. Okay, do you stake sooner than later, please?
Sooner than later, next week, no, because it's just impossible to get, even, we have our own surveying firm and I can't even get my guys out there in a week, but yeah, certainly, I'd say within the next month we can get it done. That's way before we'll have any type of building permit, in fact, or zoning. So certainly, by the time you make your decision, we can have something.
Yeah, when are we going to deliberate on this thing, 2 weeks? Something like that?
July 11th, we'll deliberate and expect a decision late July or early August.
So they're not going to get their decision from us until July 23rd, and today's June 23rd, so, okay.
So we can say end of July, we can certainly have that out there. Are you looking to have some stake before your decision?
Yeah, can you do middle of July?
Sure, we can.
They give you 3 weeks? You said this week, no, but you get 3 weeks between now and July.
Yeah.
That'd be very nice. Keep some people happy.
Do we need a sequencing plan for this? I mean, it's an acre of land, it's not a tiny site.
I guess that you can discuss that during deliberations and if you want.
Okay, but we don't need to hold the hearing open for a sequence plan. Okay, that's fine. Any other questions for the applicant? Maybe you good?
I'm just making an observation that there's no buffer between the edge of that driveway and the neighbor, and you have a very large parcel of land, and I'm curious why there was not a design to buffer the driveway activity from the neighbor. Just an observation.
In regard to planting?
Yep.
It's just a function of space to provide more buffer here. Then we need to move into this buffer here, and the goal has been to try to keep this buffer. I mean, we can certainly, you know, talk with this neighbor. I mean, there is some screening now here, and we're providing additional screening all along the pool fence. So
I mean, I walked the property, I'll just say, I walked the property the other day, and when I was walking along basically that edge, and I felt like I was kind of intruding on the neighbor, and I was just walking through.
So it's a neighbor on the south.
Yeah, it was just an observation. I walked the property, so I wanted to get a sense of where those tree lines were, and, you know, you have you have a blank slate to work with. Some buffer would have been nice. That's all my comment.
Is there a fence there, a wooden fence or a plastic fence or anything like that?
No, there's not proposed.
So when I come out, when I'm backing out of that two-car garage?
Yeah, you send it in there.
Okay.
Well, we're down below, so realize that that's a cut wall there. So the cars are below where the existing grade is on the neighbor's side. We can look into providing some kind of screening fence on there. We can discuss that with Mitch and see how open he is to that.
Okay.
But that's kind of where we are.
Did EPC or MapPop have any comment on that at all?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, good point.
Anything else? Good? You're all set, right?
All good, unless anybody has any more questions.
You want to comment on that right on the back? You okay? Any ideas you might have? I think we're talking about this wall here. Right, Amy?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the way I kind of walked in and.
Again, Matt Pop, the one comment that we originally brought up was that I'm not sure what the distance of the backup space is now, but it was pretty limited for a house of this size.
There's definitely a number.
Yeah, so I just wanted them to be aware, if you're driving a Suburban, it may be tough to get out of the garage. But I think, like a 6-foot screening fence, solid fence would be appropriate.
Okay. I think Mrs. Aptakis had an application on that once before.
I think maybe there's no floodlights on that side of the house too, or something like that, so there's no screening.
Okay. All right, Kurt, anything else? You're good? Okay, you hear what Matt said?
Yeah, we'll certainly take it into consideration, look into it, and see what we can do.
Great.
I think that's a reasonable thing.
With that said, entertain a motion to close the hearing. Jeff makes a motion, Al makes a second, all in favor? Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Hearing's closed.
So mid-July is when we think...
Deliberate. Decide late July.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, Kurt.
Okay. I knew it was going to be a long meeting, but all right, so that's the end of the public hearing. Now we're going to go into the general meeting. Time permitting, deliberation possible decision regarding business site plan application number 234 Bean Boy, special permit application number 236A Apple, Grove Street Plaza, LLC, Harvest Restaurant, Group 14 Grove Street. Proposed to establish a new full-service restaurant on the first floor in basement space fully occupied by Milton. Proposed to establish a part-time seasonal use of the existing plaza area to accommodate outdoor dining for the new restaurant, the business at 20 Grove Street, and the general public. Hearing closed on April 25th, 2023. Decision deadline on June 29th, 2023. We got a draft resolution in our packet on this one. I've got a few questions on it, but I just need Jeremy to fill us in on what we need to know relative to the board of selectmen went over this last night.
They did.
And what they might have, and then I couldn't figure out I might have missed a last set of deliberations. I don't think I did, but I thought we were going to limit it to 60 to 65 seats or something like that. And this plan on exhibit 2 has got the whole shooting match again.
Right. Well, as you in the resolution, we talk about the change in the state statute, which is Exhibit 1, which says basically that if it's on your own property, you can put out as many tables and chairs as you want. That wasn't Darien Planning and Zoning saying that. That was the state Connecticut legislature. So when you talk about what areas on the plan are those areas. Those would be the areas in the front of both 14 Grove, which is the subject restaurant, as well as the Espresso Neat. Because as we talk about in paragraph 17, the existing planting beds, I should say in front of the buildings, will be removed. So we can put tables, two tops in front of each of the buildings. As discussed at the public hearing, the two tables of 4 in front of 14 Grove will not be there so as to provide access in and out, and I'm showing you there. So there'll be 4 tables, 8 chairs in front of 14, and 3 tables, 6 chairs in front of number 20. Then we talk about the area adjacent to the Espresso Neat and Flour Water Salt Bread. There's one row directly adjacent, and then a second row which is close
Adjacent of which? The
to
flower?
the buildings.
On both buildings, you're talking about? Okay.
Nope, we're just talking about
Flour salt.
Flour Salt Espresso Neat. Those are 6 tables right up against the building.
Yep.
And then a row further in between the building and the fountain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tables. Everyone's with me so far?
Yep.
Those are all tables on their property.
Yep.
Also on their property is a row adjacent to 14 Grove. And as they talked at the hearing, there's going to be 1 or 2 tables removed right near the entrance doors in acknowledgement of the fact that those are entrances right near their upstairs residential. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 adjacent to the building, and in the rightmost corner, there's a host or hostess stand right there. Then another row immediately adjacent, I'll call it between the building and the fountain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tables in between the trees. So those are all tables and chairs, which under the new state statute, they're allowed to put together administrative site plan as of right.
Put 78 seats.
78 seats. So
So
now we're
when
up
you say
to,
administrative site plan, it means it just comes to
basically staff would
you and
approve
you.
it to confirm it's all on their property. So
And
now,
is there any weigh-in from the fire marshal to say, hey, this is too many for safe navigation of?
The statute does require that there does need to be safe passage between, and walking space between,
Okay.
if it's on a sidewalk or a public, the public plaza is excluded from that.
But like an access doorway into, you
Right,
know,
right.
more.
that'll be ultimately up to the fire marshal or building official, but
Okay.
I think by eliminating the 2 in the front
Yep.
and 1 or 2 on the side, that should eliminate a lot of
But
it.
there's a way for you to weigh in with reasonableness.
Yes.
On
Planning and
functionality.
zoning still needs to
Okay.
administratively approve the plan.
Okay.
It's just at the discretion of the regulations,
Yeah.
our current regulations, and making sure that, it meets fire and safety code and other pertinent codes.
Accessibility, things like that.
And it should also be noted that just because these tables exist directly adjacent to Flour, Water, Salt, and Neat, that the new proposed restaurant doesn't plan on utilizing those tables for their lunch and dinner service as they maintained or described during the hearing.
So that means that if those 2 establishments are closed technically when that restaurant's open at night, that if you just go down there and you happen to sit down, that you're still allowed to sit down and use those?
Yes.
Then there's no, okay.
Right.
Which ones? The ones that's on Flower or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not gonna be utilizing those during the night is what the question is, but like if I went down there and
Right. I mean, they don't.
packed a picnic and just sat there, I mean, there's gonna be no, like, true issue with.
From our understanding,
What does Patty's memo say that what they guys sent to us on June 6th? Is that just really relates to the plaza area?
Yes. So now what we're left with are the 4 tables in front of the fountain and the 4 tables behind the fountain.
Right.
And that's, in essence, what went to the Board of Selectmen last night. 4 tables in front, 4 tables in back.
And they decided what?
The selectmen did not decide it. They voiced their concerns with a number of matters. No decision was made. We acknowledge that both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Selectmen will need to approve this. If one or the other does not, those 8 tables won't be there. They'll get all the other, but they won't get those 8.
So
If they don't get those 8, there might be a change in their thinking on utilizing the other ones. Would it be logical?
Would be logical. I know during our hearing, they talked about the fact that under current conditions, flour, water, salt bread's usually closed by 11 a.m. or noon, and Espresso Neat gets, well, they do get some customers afternoon. The nature of the business is geared towards the morning.
Right, but I mean, I was there Sunday afternoon, I think all the stores were closed and there was a bunch of
Right, there's
families
people just
sitting
hanging
there
out, right, which is great. So
Still, even if they get nothing in the plaza, it's still 58 seats if they don't sit anybody in front of Saltwater and Neat, or 78 seats. So even if we say nothing in the plaza, they're still getting a boatload of more outdoor seating than any restaurant in town.
that's true.
But that's not, I mean, I know what I know what you're saying, but that's not what we discussed at the last.
Right, so the question is, we've drafted a resolution where we talked about, I think the way we left it, Fred, was just the 4 behind the fountain, but not the 4 in front of the fountain. Is that correct?
I believe we wrote it up to allow additional seating behind the fountain than what's shown on the plan. I think we say six tables and 24 chairs.
Right, so we put, instead of 4 in front of the fountain, 4 tables in front and 4 tables in back, we said 6 tables in back, nothing in front.
But out here, there's not 6 tables in the back, there's only 4 in the back.
That's correct. What we drew needs,
It's not consistent with the words.
right.
We didn't draw.
We didn't draw.
We didn't draw anything.
Doesn't parking like come right up to this anyway?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's not of concern to anyone, like, you know?
Concern to me.
Concern, like a car lurches forward and like plows over and hits a table or someone?
Can you fit 6 tables in the back there?
I guess if the commission wants to approve 4,
I don't even know.
3 or 2 or 1 or none, that's fine with us.
Personally, I mean, again, just mine, I would eliminate the 4, the 2 2s and the 2 4s out of the back.
Yeah, I didn't think we were doing this at all. I was just doing.
Which one is it?
We're really just dealing with.
So if the parking is here, I would eliminate those 4.
Oh, all of these.
Yeah.
I
mean,
These
more of a
are,
safety
these are
concern.
these are behind a wall. These are behind a stone wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys are behind that stone wall. Yeah, yeah.
Let me go to a different thing, and I don't remember talking about it at the deliberations, but with regard to the hours, do we care about, I don't think the place of ghost town at midnight, at 10 o'clock at night. Remember when Jake, it's different applications, John Leahy was like apoplectic with regards to the sound at that one, at 2 Scott Lane, because I know the applicant asked for those hours, right? And then later we're approving those hours, which is 11 p.m. Monday through Wednesday, midnight Thursday through Saturday, and 10 p.m. on Sundays. Does anybody care about that?
Can we restrict the outdoor hours? I mean, I don't have any problem, I agree, I don't see anybody being out at 10 at night on a Sunday, but maybe they'll get lucky. Same thing with Thursday through Saturdays. Midnight seems late. Can we restrict the outdoor hours?
Sure.
To kill the outdoor hours at...
There are apartments above?
Yeah.
And then there's Clock Hill Homes right there.
Yeah, I definitely consider consider reducing hours.
Because Cocktail Homes is, yeah, I mean, that's
The other
their
side of the parking lot.
Because we asked that of David, I think at the time, and he said, you know, they're one-year leases, if I don't like it, then we'll move on. I was like, why not?
So limit outdoor till 9,
But I was
9:30.
I was in 10:20 last Wednesday, and I got kicked out. I was the last guy drinking. It was 10 o'clock at night. One more because we're closed. I guess we'll leave.
Thoughts on hours of limitations?
Outdoor?
10 at night
Yeah, I think so.
seems fine for outdoor. I mean, 9 seems in
You can always go
summertime
in.
is a little early, and they can always get that last drink inside, right?
It's 9 o'clock. It's 9:45 now. Right?
Yeah, it's one of the later days of the year too with the light. Certainly
What do you
10.
think, Mike? I think it's fine. Honestly, I think we should be encouraging businesses like this to come to town. Great family, great story. You know, I think it's very compelling, and I think quibbling over 6 tables is ridiculous.
Dude, my point is...
Yes, my opinion, 9:45, though, so.
I thought we were on time.
No, we are. It's just, the restaurant was, I think their application was 114 seats outside, 120 seats inside. It's 236 seats out in the area restaurant. Plus, this is exempt from parking. Okay. Any typos, questions, comments, scrivener's errors on the body of the resolution? Instead of getting into the meat of it?
As I said, the only change I would recommend is paragraph 17, where we use the phrase existing planting beds. To reduce any confusion, I would say the existing planting beds in front of the buildings.
Okay. Yep.
And then, as you said, condition C, outdoor hours, we'll say the maximum hours of indoor operation, and then maximum hours of outdoor are 10 p.m.
So where are you, paragraph C?
C on page 6.
Is front clear over Grove Street?
I think Grove Street side is excellent choice. Grove Street.
I was just
Number 17.
What they're doing in the front planters.
So, I'm sorry, getting back to hours, we're saying 10 PM on every single night and not allowing longer operations on the weekends, Thursday through Saturdays?
Outside.
Outside.
Inside, we don't care.
The state statute, if you look at 8-1 CC,
Yep.
it talks about until 9 o'clock at night or a time established by the zoning commission, whichever is later.
Okay. And what are our, do we have limits of hours for the outdoor behind 10:20?
I was gonna ask that, what's 10:20's hours? You don't know?
You don't know?
I have no idea.
And maybe we should, just all the other restaurants that are about to come on David's properties, with all those outdoor, plaza-like setting, what all of those are going to be. I just want to make it, I think we should make it consistent.
Definitely.
A thought to make it consistent.
Like Bodega's got that outdoor seating in the back. Rory still has...
Bodega, get rid of it.
It's there. I don't care what you think,
Well,
it's
it's the
there.
one or two tables behind the bagel place.
It's more than one or
Yeah.
two tables.
Oh, yeah, that little area to the left.
Yeah. Rory's still got their outdoor seating.
I would personally just like to make an inquiry to see what is an expectation to attract all these restaurants. The ability to create a lease for these new restaurants that are coming in. Is it, I don't operate a restaurant. I'm guessing 10 on a weekends might be early. I'm guessing. But, so I'd at least like to ask the question.
I was at Seymour's late after the lacrosse day. I don't know if they were getting service out there, but I can tell you people were sitting outside of Seymour's late at night. That was Friday night.
The Thursday through Saturday, I understand why they want, a little bit later on that. So I don't know that 10's quite practical.
What time are the restaurants open till? It just varies restaurant to restaurant, right?
They all vary.
They all vary.
I mean, inside, when we did the Goose a couple of years ago, there was hours to that.
I have to check.
I know. I mean, do you want to go over this tonight or when? punt it for the, we have to approve this thing tonight?
No.
No, I mean, could we have,
just
like,
punt
an
it
answer by
and
next
get
week in
some
terms of hours on
Yeah.
select restaurants
Yeah.
in town? That have outdoor seating, at least?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, so
Okay.
let's punt this.
And then just whether we can really fit 6 tables in the back there. Are we eliminating the front, are we all in agreement that the tables in front of the fountain are by Grove Street are out, and the ones in the back, are we saying 4 or 6?
I mean, I would only do 4, that's what's
I
on
don't
the
know that we
plan.
can, I don't,
6 is that.
I don't know that 6 would fit.
They already have 50
Yeah,
seats.
where does 6 come
And
from?
presumably you could reconfigure these,
There's only
right?
4.
Yeah,
Maybe closer to the fountain
those two
or
Yeah.
out, put another 4 there,
Yeah.
4 there,
Yeah.
alternative,
and then eliminate
alternative
that single-
configurations that might not be shown on the
Right.
plan.
Okay. And if it's not practical, they won't do it. If they can't get a bus board behind it and a wait staff around the table to serve food, they're not gonna do it.
Right.
Would you let, if you were there, you let them going into the
Yeah.
parking lot.
Yeah,
walking away.
okay, then I'm
There's a-
thinking it.
There's
Okay.
a wall there.
Well, we probably should say not more than, don't be closer than 6 feet to the sidewalk or whatever is back there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll keep working on it.
Okay.
Punt.
Okay.
All right, next item on the agenda. Discussion deliberates only proposed amendments to zoning regulation. Proposed amendments to zoning regulation COZR number 1-2023, site plan application number 310A, special permit application number 324A, frontage deprivation application number 425A, 7 Sedgwick Avenue LLC at 7 Sedgwick Avenue. If you don't mind, I'm just going to read this into the hearing again. Proposal to amend section 726, parent 13 of the zoning regulations to increase the maximum floor area of dwelling units in the central business district CBD from 1,000 square feet to 1,600 square feet. Proposal to amend section 726, note F of the zoning regulations to clarify residential parking requirements in the central business district CBD. Proposal to raise the existing bank building on the site, convert and redevelop the property as multifamily residential, and to perform related site development activities within regulated area, including regrading the property, installation of landscaping, lighting, stormwater management. The applicant proposes to construct a multifamily apartment building with a total of 22 one-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments on 2 floors above the parking level, including 4 deed-restricted affordable units. The hearing closed on May 23rd, 2023. Decision deadline is July 27th, 2023. Did you guys deliver this at all when I left last week?
No, that's for you.
Yes, we did.
We moved very quickly through it.
So then, last time we went over the blue sheets
Yeah.
that Fred put together. I think we got halfway through page 1. I wanted to make sure that, I don't know what order this is, but I wanted to make sure that we saw Jeff Ball here as a, you're a fire chief, aren't you?
No.
You're not a chief? You're a fire captain. As a member of the fire staff in town, or fire department in town, to go over that. So where do you want us to pick up, Fred or Jeremy, in this? Because I don't have my other piece of paper where I checked off the weird stuff.
Yeah, I think the goal of putting this on for tonight was to get feedback and input from Jeff and anything else the commission may have. I know we've talked about this at least twice already, and this will give Fred and I a chance to pull together a first draft for your meeting in July.
I know there was also some questions from the commission and Mike relative to parking, and maybe some commission members had some, looking for some additional clarifications on the 3rd floor and whether or not a public plaza would be required, or, how that all sort of ties in with, with the project here. So we did do a little bit of some additional research on those topics. I took a look at the parking in particular. They're proposing a total of 38 parking spaces under the building. For one-bedroom units per section 904 of the regulations, 1.5 spaces are required for one-bedroom units, and 2 spaces are required for two-bedroom units. That equates to 37 parking spaces, and 38 are being provided. That additional space is for the leasing office. So
all parking that they have is underground?
At grade.
It's at grade.
It's at grade.
In a flood zone.
Under the building.
Flood zone under the building. So
Now, open up the question for a second. With regards to the clarification of his second proposal, amend this, I mean, I don't think anybody was in favor of making that clarification, but I think Mike Danner's point was that you need the clarification to get the parking. Is that right?
yeah, so the clarification that he's adding here is relative to section 726 of the regulations under the central business district, specific to note F, which states that one additional off-street parking space per bedroom shall be required. So the question becomes...
But that doesn't say mixed use, is the second half of that
Right,
sentence?
so his clarification...
This isn't a mixed use project, so why don't we hit?
Correct.
Because I think he's trying to take away the requirement of the additional parking
Right,
space.
in mixed commercial and residential development. So he's saying that for a fully residential project, that this one additional off-street parking space per bedroom would not be required. It would only be required for a mixed-use commercial and residential development. In the case of a fully residential building where the commission or the regulations would require this one additional off-street parking space, let's take, for example, a 2-bedroom unit, right? Which requires a total of 2 parking spaces per section 904 of the regulations. And then you took this and applied the one additional off-street parking space per bedroom, you would be requiring 4 parking spaces for a 2-bedroom unit. That is the reason for the clarification, to only require those additional spaces for a mixed-use residential and commercial project.
But it's got nothing to do with this application, right? He was just doing it because he was a nice guy or something like that?
No, I think, so Fred, let me clarify. So the calculation under the current regulations would be 4 spaces per 2-bedroom unit. And they do not comply with that.
Correct. Unless, when the zoning changed several years ago relative to multifamily parking requirements, whether this was something that was potentially overlooked in the regulations, that may very well be the case. Of course, four parking spaces for a 2-bedroom apartment is, I think, we could all agree is excessive.
The other thing that I think is even more to the point of this application is that in the central business district, we require dwelling units to be on the upper floors. So clearly, the first floor of the parking is floor number 1. The upper floor, which is where the first element of apartments are, is floor number 2. Then there's clearly a 3rd floor.
Right, the 3 professionals testified to 3
So
stories.
there's clearly, this building is clearly 3 floors. So to me, this speaks to that doesn't have the other elements of the public plaza and the buffering that is required on that. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that too, with regards to clarification. Where, because I was going through the zoning regs and I didn't see the public plaza element didn't pop out at me.
Right.
Where are we on that?
Yeah, so there's two separate portions of the regulations relative to third floors and allowing a third floor. One is under section 585 of the regulations relative to inclusionary zoning and incentives provided under that section of the regulations. And the second portion that allows that third floor is under section 726, again, under the Central Business District regulations, note E under section 726, where when an applicant provides an area of open space that meets the regulation, they're entitled to that third floor.
Which is what happened at 1020, which is what happened at 1213 Grove Street.
Right, right.
It's happened multiple times.
Yeah. However...
So go back to the first piece, because he said they're not giving us a plaza, they're not doing a third story, and so Mazda lost on that. But now you have to go back to the other way you can get it, which says this incentive unit.
Right, so under section 585, incentive units under the inclusionary regulations, the height may be increased to allow up to 3 stories, and the height may be increased to 32.5 feet by special permit, of course, if those additional, if the...
Right, well, let me read the wording from the statute.
Can I back up 1 second? I know it's a different building in a different zone, but how did we do it over at where Zoots is in the cars put in? That's got a third floor.
It's a different zoning district.
So it doesn't matter.
That's in the neighborhood business zone, and that was done under section 585 of the regulations as well.
So the wording in section 85, right, which is the inclusionary zoning, which is if you build more than 5 apartments or condos, you have to provide an affordable unit with the provision that in such cases, and this is just the last sentence here, the commission may, at the absolute discretion of the commission, allow any or all of the following waivers, provided the commission finds that such waiver encourages the development of below market rate housing and is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. A, recreational or open space requirements may be reduced. Minimum yard requirements may be reduced. There are no yard requirements in this zone. Maximum building coverage may be increased. There's no max building coverage in the CBD. Parking requirements may be reduced. Height may be increased to 3 stories. Height may be increased to allow maximum height of 32.5 feet. And then it goes into other, you can't deviate by a certain amount, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Let me go back to one thing. You said affordable housing, or what did you say with regards to the
inclusionary?
No, you use the word that you said it was. No, you didn't use the word affordable housing.
I'll call it incentive unit, below market rate housing.
Yeah, did it say below market rate housing?
It doesn't say that, but that's what we're talking about.
Okay, because it's 2 different things. Below market
rate.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So my notes show at the last, I just want to step back for 1 second. At the last hearing, we talked about the increase in maximum floor area, which is one of their proposals to change from 1,000 square feet to 1,600. My notes show, the sense I got from the commission was there is not support on the commission for that change.
No traction for that is my take on it.
Okay.
So that makes the apartments all 1,000 square feet or less, which is, there's no reason to change the zone. There's no evidence in the record or town plan of conservation development says we should do it.
Okay.
We want to create housing that's affordable.
So that will be one thing that they'll have to change because the plan, they reflect all the units being created.
Doesn't that kill everything else?
It's likely that they'll have to redesign because their design is based on that larger number.
So so there's two parts to this application.
Right, the zone changes,
Right.
and on the site plan and special permit. So,
We still have to do a full resolution on everything.
right,
It's the same, it's similar to the same way that we did 7-Eleven, where 7-Eleven needed a special permit to get it. They never got the special permit from ZBA, or they never got the waiver from ZBA, but we still wrote up a full resolution. It's, as soon as you get it.
Denying.
Yeah,
It's kind of game over, but.
Yeah,
you
you're
know,
still gonna do it.
You still gotta do it.
I think there's I don't want to use a baseball analogy, but there's kind of three big strikes here, they couldn't get out of A or B.
right,
We have this, the max 1,000 square foot. We've got the lack of a public plaza area for 3 stories. And then you can split hairs on the parking, whether they do meet our updated requirements or not, but there's a fair amount on the one side of the column, in my mind.
Great, let's go into, agreed, let's go into one aspect where I would like to hear.
And not to mention the flood zone and the parking,
Yeah.
the flood zone and the evacuation procedures and
Right.
all that.
I would like to hear Jeff Ball's thoughts on putting 22 apartments in an area of town that's in a flood zone, that if something does, God forbid, happen, that I think you might be on the team that goes and rescues those people. At one point in time, they had a roof where I was thinking that, everyone could go to the roof of the building, and the helicopter comes in and plucks them off the roof, or
He's like,
hook and
"We watched
ladder
too
comes
many
off the
movies,
top of the roof. In Los Angeles?
I don't,
roof thing on
I really don't feel comfortable making any comment on it, just because it's not necessarily my district. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I mean, Fire Marshal always can talk about that in terms of, or the chief of Darien Fire Department can do that, but, totally outside of my wheelhouse to make a comment like that.
Okay. Right, pressures and the chief, in attached to your blue sheets, you did put Fire Marshal Bush's notes here.
Yeah.
And what does he have to say? Standpipe, verify adequate water supply for fire suppression, full fire sprinkler, provide fire alarms, provide access for fire service. Do we think there's good access for fire service? Provide for ingress and applies on the building codes. As a lobby, exit out, ingress does not appear readily visible. The glass doors lead to the parking areas. But the proposed occupancy load, that went away. I think one of the things we also have to make sure and that if we're going to approve something that's in an area that we know is at risk and it's not safe, that's something that I think the planning and zoning commission cannot overlook. We're not going to allow someone to build a building that's not safe, and I think that's one of Mike Netter's points.
I think that Mike's point, Amy, one thing you talked about, which Mike commented last time, was the transformer needs to be up and a platform. I think that was another issue that there was really not shown on the plans, and that'll have to be something, if they do come back, they'll have to figure out how to address that.
Right. And to Amy's point earlier, we've never approved something that's not there. George, you want to chime in at all?
The only thing I would add to your list is I don't like the whole trash removal thing. I haven't understood really the curb cut for a truck parking there or moving things around. I saw some reference to like a trash bin for every unit, and I don't think that's practical. So I've never liked that part of it either.
And Steve, your comment last time was the loading space should be on the property, not in the street.
That's what I thought, yeah. I've never really seen a loading space. When we did Maplewood, we specifically took the loading space out of the street. They never built the building anyway. I don't think you want, and I've never done that, cut through, that I did that first time the other day. It is actually pretty cool to go through that parking lot.
It's like a snake, yeah, it's not a quick cut through.
I'm like, who does this? It was a waste of time. I issues with the light gets stuck in stormwater.
No, it's way quicker to go that way.
Yeah.
If you're going left on Post Road, 100%. Really significantly faster.
I think the other thing is, Amy, your point, and it sort of ties into what George just brought up, the cars during a flood event. You're gonna have 22 vehicles, or 38 vehicles parked underneath the building. You're gonna have trash receptacles in an unsecured room. You're basically gonna have an environmental problem.
Then you have the fire department getting people out of the building.
And you get the fire department trying to get people out of the building.
Okay.
Waiting around cars that are floating. I mean, we heard testimony from one of the residents that there was a car floating at that intersection during one of the high water events.
I've seen that on TV many times, floating down the road. It happened last week in Mississippi. I've seen it. You want to go back to the blue sheets, page 2. It says stormwater management, section 880, stormwater management drainage considerations. I think they checked all the boxes on that, right?
Yeah, this was peer reviewed by Joe Canis. I think the drainage system, I think
he signed off on it.
Signed off on it, yeah.
Then with regards to peer reviews for time bonds, stormwater, and then Hardesty and Hanover traffic and parking. The only thing I would say relative to Hardesty and Hanover traffic and parking is we learned from Amy Suchin's, when we took that class, that we can supplement what Hardesty and Hanover, what the traffic engineers say by our own personal knowledge, being living in there. Hardesty and Hanover, at the end of the day, I think signed off on it with regard to traffic and parking, but we, as residents and people that cut through there all the time, know that there's issues there. So I think that's something you have to consider.
Also, Steve, did you see the police commissioner made the same note.
Report?
Why did see that? When did I?
Last page. Traffic study was old, not a good time. Traffic backs up regularly. Same stuff we brought up.
And all the neighbors who live there have witnessed.
Is the parking lot gated? No, it's not.
Right.
So,
I mean, that stuff, when I took the class with Amy Suchin, you're allowed to take in your personal thing, and it may conflict with a traffic professional.
Right, your question last time was, did you get comments from the LTA and the fire marshal? So we included those in your packet.
Got it. I did not see this, thank you. It's dated next February 9th with regard to the project. So you have some stuff to add into that one. Right to the next one, special permit consideration, section 1005 zone, consistency of section 105. Standard for approval, special permit after considering health and safety and welfare of the public in general and the immediate neighborhood in particular, provided the commission shall make the following findings. We just talked about the health, safety and welfare of the public, in general and in the immediate neighborhood. If you have cars floating and there's 22 families that are in the building, I think that is something that matters. The location and size of the use, nature, intensity of operation involved in or conducted with the size of the site in relation to the location of the site with respect to the streets, giving it access to and shall be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development in the district in which it's located. We've heard from ARB, multiple times that it's not in harmony with the neighborhood. We talked about the site and the access and all that stuff. And it is intense use. I keep saying that 45 units an acre on the property. That would be the most dense project in all the town of Darien in terms of intensity of use. B, the location, nature, and size of the height of the buildings, walls, fences, nature, and extent of landscaping, screening, lighting, so on and so forth, shall not hinder or discourage appropriate development and use of adjacent lands and buildings or impair the value thereof. That's the impairing the value thereof is always a tough thing to argue for an appraiser. But we did hear testimony from the neighbors with regards to the size of the site and the landscaping. There's not a whole lot of landscaping there at all on the property. Matt Pop did have a little bit of landscaping there. We went over the lighting, I guess that was okay. The next item is elements of site plan as permitted as part of the special permit shall accomplish the objectives of the site plan approval as specified in 1024. What's that one mean, Chris? What's 1024?
Right here.
Back to the videotape.
1024 is the site plan requirements for all uses requiring a site plan. So here, we talk about the elements of site plan shall accomplish the objectives in terms of, and I think you had some concerns about, the location, and I know one of the commission's concerns, which they addressed at the end, was all the stuff going on the roof. Their last revision took all that out. So that was one of the concerns that would have been covered here. I know the ARB issues here in terms of, closeness to the building, the fact that it's all one facade, that would also relate to this. So, 1024.
Parking, loading, circulation is all part of this, signs and lighting.
Yep, so all those issues.
Open space and landscaping plan, architectural plans, all of that is taken into consideration under section 1024 relative to the site plan.
So they don't have any open space, we know that.
Right, talks in 1024 2C, it talks about transformers and dumpsters, which we've talked about as well. So I think what we'll aim to do is have a draft resolution for July 11th, which is, I think, 3 weeks from today.
Yep.
27th?
Yeah, the 27th is, your packets are going out in about 48 hours.
I was referring to July 27th.
Oh, July.
That's the last day.
That's right. So what we're trying to do is get a lot of decisions done for July 11th. Try to clean up as much of the pending matters as possible.
And then, if I could just read that land, where it shall propose to convert a structure, design, or built originally for another use. Like I said, that's conversion. The applicant shall show applicability of such structure as to proposed use, particularly in relation to public health and safety. So that's all in this section 1005.
Well, they're not really converting that structure.
No, you're right. It says converting in their legal notice, but not converting anything.
No.
Weren't they changing it from a commercial property to residential?
Yeah, but they're knocking it down. So this is more for like a fit-up type situation.
Yeah.
I thought the word was converting.
It is used there, yeah.
Wherever possible, reasonable, considered community protection, preservation, or enhancement of natural environment in conformance with section 10100I. There really is there's no special environment around this thing, except that it's in the flood zone. As a condition of approving the plans, use of conservation restrictions to protect and permanently preserve nature and unique features, enhance the character of the environment, shall be necessary for control of sediment and erosion. We're not, it's not the building and everything, right? There's no grass?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll get started.
Anything else to add, folks? No?
Steve, I know we talked about it, I would just like to get a little bit better idea from the commission relative to the maximum floor area of dwelling units, the proposal of going from 1,000 to 1,600. What are your specific findings for?
There's no evidence in the testimony of why we should increase it. There's nothing in the town plan of conservation development of why we should increase it. And then we also talked about affordability. If you make larger apartments, it's going to make the apartments, the rents higher. This gentleman today is going to build a 7,000 square foot house. I gotta believe that guy's house is worth more than buying a 2,000 square foot house. So if you're going from apartments that are 900 square feet to 1,600 square feet, I gotta believe the rent's a lot higher. We want to build housing in town that's affordable for everybody, along with affordable housing.
Yep.
And if you go larger, David Geneviese's buildings, all the buildings that we've approved in the last few years have large units, and some of those rents are $6,000, $8,000. There's no evidence in any record that says we need more $8,000 apartments.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if a realtor in town What's the
Very
comment
hard
on
to-
that?
Very, very hard to find reasonable rents.
It's small use where
Very,
people, you know,
very
there's people want to stay in town. There's moms and pops want to stay in town.
Right.
All the one bedrooms over at Federal were the first ones to go. They were the smallest units at Federal, which is Darien Commons. The ones that were left were the larger 2 bedrooms. Those are the last ones to lease. They were larger units and the rents were higher.
The inclusionary zoning regulations would still, of course, apply to the larger 1,600 square foot units, and there would be a certain number, 4 in this case, affordable units that would fall into those larger square footages, but, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
You're getting, at Federal, we're getting 16 affordables. At David Genovese, we got 14. You know, here the proposal's gonna get 4. That doesn't move the dial. At Avalon, there's 32 affordables.
47.
47 affordables? Thank you. This is 4. It's not, for the health and safety, to get 4 affordable units.
The other observation, just as from a resident, we know that that bottleneck of that location, you know, the stormwater management studies that I get based on a perfect environment of an open flowing Goodwives River, the water should shed and do these things. But when it has a collection of Ducanans and Dariens, patio furniture and, you know, bikes and trikes and things, it doesn't operate and react the way that I think sometimes the studies provide. And this is at the mouth of that this is at that hot spot. So I think we really, really have to be careful about what we approve in this location.
And I think the last piece is, we asked the testimony, at the beginning, the sewer commission held it up because they weren't sure there was enough capacity there. Then all of a sudden, miraculously, they said, okay, there's just barely enough capacity for what's proposed. If they somehow or other make the units smaller and come back with 24 units, they gotta go back to the sewer commission. So, I mean, this can go round and round and round and round. And it's already 45 or 46 units an acre, which is the most intense project in the entire town.
Right.
Okay.
A smaller unit would increase density, though.
Nope. You can make less of them.
Right.
There's no law that says you gotta build
Right.
22 units.
You also have a parking constraint.
Yep.
Right, you can only fit so many parking spaces.
Make it 24 units, then now they just came up short 4 parking spaces.
Yep.
Right? That's what we have. Okay?
Yep.
Is that good enough?
Yep.
It's now 10:22, so we can move on. Can we punt the approvals to next time?
Sure.
Okay. And then there's no deliberations on anything closed tonight. We're not doing any of that. There's no other business. Upcoming, next meeting is the 27th, which is next Tuesday. Then we have July 4th off, and then July 11th. Okay? With that said, looking for a motion to close. There's the Mike. Looking for a second. Jeff, all in favor?
Thank you all.
10:22 at night. We're home by 3-hour meeting.